Part 307. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 3074. Is that senior really so shocking? Really? I knocked out several galaxy-level people through the air. We still can't figure out what method was used. How strong is this senior? Beast and others have returned to Yin Yang Star. When the three little brats revealed this matter to several major disciples, everyone was shocked. At first, they misunderstood that Beast was talking nonsense, but this matter received a positive response from the arresting deacons, and they suddenly fell into a kind of confusion. There is no other reason. The terror of Yin Yang Master is beyond their imagination. Today they heard about another mysterious senior whose strength is unbelievable. Gudu. Ryan swallowed and glanced at the two junior sisters who were also there, but covered their mouths from time to time, with an air of "we all know everything." These two junior sisters must have known about it. A flash of understanding flashed through Ryan's mind, but he didn't ask anything. From the day when the two junior sisters suddenly visited, the disciples of their yin-yang sect knew that the identity of these two little brats was completely different from theirs. Therefore, wanting to learn more information about Yin and Yang Dao from the two real direct disciples was the bottom line that they had tacitly agreed not to touch. Maybe asking, it just adds to the embarrassment, and the junior sisters are unwilling to answer, so they are losing face for no reason. It's so funny. The little fish's pink fins are holding its own mouth, and it looks like it can't help laughing. It's very cute. The disciples looked at her and Edisha, who was also acting incomprehensible, and then sighed again after looking at each other. They can feel the huge difference between the two sides. Will disperse. Several disciples looked excited or shocked. The eldest disciple Billy was flying leisurely in the sky, and with her was Beast, who was similar in age. The two were not much different in age, but they were the eldest sister and junior disciple among the direct disciples, which felt a bit funny. Senior sister, I believe that our future vision cannot be limited to the small backward starry sky. Billy looked at the beast who made the remarks, carefully looked at the beast's horn that emitted the power of the lightning array, and then looked at her rabbit hands, feeling a little helpless. She knew that compared to the beast's, her talent was actually not that good, and she might not be able to get started with the power of the formation. You are speaking lightly. I think the Yin-Yang sect is just a sect created by Master at will. I am just passing by this time. If we want to step into the backward starry sky, it will be very difficult for the children of backward starry sky like us. Beast's eyes were bright and he said, nothing is difficult in the world, as long as there are people who are willing. Have you forgotten what Master said? Billy was startled, then nodded again. When she was first accepted as a disciple by her master, she had extremely low self-esteem. The master had such a mantra from the beginning, which cheered her up and made many other brothers and sisters adopt this as their life creed. But that is just the creed that supports their efforts in the backward starry sky. Facing areas beyond the backward stars, these geniuses from backward places are nothing. Now that they saw the Yin and Yang Dao, it was far more powerful than they imagined. With their ambitions and gazes looking out along the Yin and Yang Dao, they suddenly felt a sense of powerlessness in their hearts. Beast is probably the first disciple who wants to resist fate. But it's definitely not the last one. Including Billy herself, once she embarks on the path of being strong, there will be an endless pursuit of the path of being strong. She will not reach the end, or she will be exhausted and unable to continue. At that point in time, none of them must be willing to stop. Senior sister, this world is far bigger than we imagined. I finally understand that Yin and Yang Dao is a great opportunity for us. Whether we can get out of the backward starry sky in this life, or even find our own path in the outside world, is on the Yin and Yang Dao. I'm going to practice. Senior sister, take my leave. The sound of lightning and thunder above the beast's horn roared, perhaps because he had another realization. Billy looked at the unicorn, which was huge to her, disappearing from her eyes like a meteor. Confusion and struggle emerged in the blood-red rabbit eyes. After a while, Billy sighed slightly. Forget it, now that I have embarked on this road, there is no way out. She firmed up her expression and flew into the distance. Not only these two young disciples, but also several other people, including Ryan, Lankuo, Biha, and Aopin, also had a dignified and solemn look on their expressions after the discussion. And all this. The person who had a clear view of them was none other than Jia Yan. But it's not Jia Yan's clone Yin Yang, but his real body. The real body came to the subspace deep in the Yin Yang sect and looked at everything in the outside world indifferently. Greed is the original sin of the strong, but it is also the best mentality for them to grow up. If they don't want to be the disciples of the strong, I don't want to. Now it seems that they at least meet the basic conditions for becoming Yin and Yang Dao disciples. It's a pity. The giant mosquito was deep in the subspace and looked at this group of strange yet familiar disciples with a strange look. He only knew these disciples through their clones, so they were very unfamiliar. But the clone's personal experience was absorbed into the depths of his mind, and it was not an exaggeration to say he was familiar with it. And under such a situation, it allowed Jia Yan to calm down and observe the performance of these disciples. They are all great. It is also the mold of a strong man. However, there are so many creatures with this kind of template, as numerous as Hengsha. Unfortunately, none of these disciples have the talent of Edisha or Xiaoyuer, which means that their path to becoming strong will most likely not be as satisfactory as expected. Perhaps there are only 1 or 2 people who can break through to star level or above. A low-level talent like Biha, who even Jia Yan can't bring out, will probably have a hard time reaching the star level in his lifetime. The power of the array has been studied by them for almost all time. It's time for them to try the gene array theory. Whether they can seize this opportunity, and whether they can use the genetic array to change the world and achieve the effect of those novels on the earth that cleans the scriptures and change the marrow, depends on their own efforts and abilities. The giant mosquito was in the subspace, calmly sensing all the disciples, and then gradually disappeared. It's just that he has not entered the cultivation state. There are still unstable factors within the yin-yang sect, as well as the existences behind the galaxy level. For Jia Yan, it is somewhat difficult for him to settle down. After these matters are dealt with, he will enter the formal state of practicing and researching the formation. Were you an adult just now? Far away in the formation explanation dojo in the starry sky, Leda, who is undoubtedly the strongest person in the yin-yang sect, silently opened his eyes, looked at the subspace somewhere, and then closed his eyes again. He has trained a number of disciples for yin-yang dao, among whom he has selected those with outstanding talents. They have accomplished the tasks assigned by the master, so he does not feel a trace of nervousness in his heart when inspecting the posts of the master. Except for Leda, no one in the entire yin-yang sect can feel the changes in the subspace anymore. Master Leda, I want to try again. While Leda was immersed in some kind of research on the power of Taoism, he heard a sound that gave him a huge headache in the past few days. The person who came was a disciple with a fairly good status in the yin-yang sect. However, he is not as good as his direct disciple, but the descendant of a stellar powerhouse. This family of disciples has done a great job for the yin-yang sect and did not engage in petty tricks, so they have been greatly praised by the yin-yang sect master and their status is not low. Under the constant pleading of the other family's patriarch, Leda had to take more care of this disciple. Pity. This disciple's talent is okay, but in terms of the power of the formation, he can only be said to be average. Lioji, I have said it several times that with your talents, it is best to waste less energy and time on the power of the formation. If you have this time, it is better to study more on the yin and yang dao, maybe the harvest will be greater. Leda smiled and said nothing. But his attitude became somewhat firm. The disciple who came was a venerable level being. Given his age, he could be regarded as a genius in the backward starry sky, but if thrown into the central star field of the Milky Way, he would definitely not be called a genius. After patiently thinking about it, I deliberately gave this guy a few small tricks, and found that the opponent's talent for the power of the formation was not bad at all, but it was just that, inferior to Edisha or even Xiaoyuer. Several levels. So Leda instantly lost interest in it. Poof. The other party knelt at Leda's feet and kept kowtowing. Master Leda, I know that I am stupid, and I also know that Master Leda is a very busy man. Now I don't ask Master to continue to explain to me. I just want to ask Leda to come forward the research sample status mentioned these days. Leda was stunned. He was annoyed by this disciple a few days ago, so he talked a little more and even mentioned researching samples, but he didn't explain it clearly. He just said that I'm afraid there are dangers in studying samples, but there are also benefits. It's a big deal. Before stable research results are obtained, the research sample does not need special status. It only needs to have a certain power of the formation and the ability of yin and yang. Later, it may be possible to obtain the power of the formation because of serving as a research sample. The super skill of superimposing yin and yang dao, and even the effect of this skill is unparalleled. Naturally, this disciple who had retained the instrument did not know the inside story. He only remembered that he was a research sample, and he might get a heaven-defying opportunity. Are you sure? I and the sect master do need a large number of research samples, but the danger of these research samples may be quite great. Disciples are not afraid of danger. The only thing they are afraid of is losing this opportunity. Then the disciple will regret it for the rest of his life. Leda pondered for a moment, and then looked at the venerable level strength possessed by this person, and still felt a little moved. Disciples with venerable level strength cannot be said to be weak in this barren yin-yang sect, but are scarce in number. The number of venerable level disciples who can pass the previous formation talent test and have attended many lessons is even rarer. If this person is willing to sacrifice himself. Leda thought about it. That's enough for all the samples you need. Of course, it is not enough to have just one person at the venerable level. It is hoped that there will be several more venerable level and stellar level samples in the future. As long as you are willing, I will first use some outside captives and non-intelligent creatures as research subjects. After I have mastered my skills, it will be your turn. But first of all, this matter is extremely risky. Are you willing? Disciple is willing. Lugu said ferociously. In fact, this disciple is on top. The power and mystery of the formation have been personally witnessed by those disciples. Although he did not have the opportunity to see the master of the sect using the power of the formation with his own eyes, he also saw the video of the time, so he was quickly shocked by the amazing skills of the power of the formation, and even more clearly understood the power of the formation. I'm afraid it will be the best weapon for killing enemies across levels. This kind of method cannot be learned, which is really a lifelong regret. Besides, in their family, no other disciples other than him entered this round of elimination to learn the power of the formation. As the only disciple, the whole family was waiting for good news about him, and he couldn't retreat. Since the formation talent is still a little bit behind, then I voluntarily applied to become a test subject. Okay, you can step back and wait for my call. Yes. Ryagai walked out with his head held high. Tisk tisk, the Milky Way central star region is indeed full of lunatics. Leda shook his head. This was the first time he felt that to outsiders like them, in the heavenly central star field of the Milky Way, the extent to which ordinary strong men were obsessed with pursuing power. To put it bluntly, the starry sky where Leda's hometown is located is the place bordering the power of the Zerg Queen. There are extremely few strong people there. Although they are not as strong as the Orion arm, they are not much different. A venerable level person can become the overlord of a party. Who would be willing to serve as a test subject casually, trusting his life and death in the hands of others? This is the central star field of the Milky Way. It is not at the galaxy level, and its positioning is weak. Of course, it is precisely because of this mentality that Your Excellency and I were able to find suitable research subjects, and there are still such a huge number. Rita opened a pamphlet. It is full of sketches and data filled with a large number of disciples' names. They are all talented formation disciples who have reached this stage. The largest number among them is naturally the extremely weak Earth-level warriors. The number of heavenly steps is second. Further up, there are fewer first-level ones than first-level ones, and the venerable level is a reserved tool only those who are willing to accept the test. At the star level, there is only his direct disciple Lankuo. In this way, a rough sample is enough. Notify Lord Jiayan and get ready to start research. Leda finished checking all the disciple information, went to Shuyuan and let out a long sigh. Only. What is the purpose of those so-called foreign spies? Hopefully they won't cause trouble and hinder our experiment. Leda looked at the starry sky beyond the black screen with twinkling eyes. Otherwise, that adult will be angry and make him angry. Tisk tisk. Leda didn't dare to imagine what would happen. If the lower level of the territory lord gets angry within the superstar, it will be a disaster-level danger. In the black hole area, it is easy for the lower-level territory lords to destroy one or two forces. The central star region of the Milky Way is even more backward than the black hole area. If Lord Jiayan takes action personally. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 3075. Existences like that rising evil force may be destroyed in a blink of an eye. It is just a piece of work for adults to destroy dozens of similar forces. It's scary to think about it. I hope it won't cause such a movement. Leda's words were duplicitous, and her eyes were filled with anticipation. It's really just a matter of watching the excitement. And if Onmyeto continues to develop, similar incidents will be inevitable. In the later stage, when the orthodoxy fights, the number of obstacles will probably be unimaginable. It is far from that time yet, so it is good to start a battle with certain forces to practice your skills. Rita, are you ready? The day after the message was sent, Leda received a response from deep in subspace. Yes, sir, I will leave the information in your hands. Leda did not dare to neglect, nor did he dare to let Jiayan come in person. Instead, he tore open the subspace, drilled into the fifth layer of the subspace, and reached the depth where Jiayan was. The giant mosquito is floating here quietly. Jiayan was slightly surprised and looked at the circle of light surrounding Leda's body. It seems that the trip to ascend the evil forces has also been fruitful for you. Leda didn't dare to be complacent and said modestly, it's all thanks to the guidance of the adults. I just have some insights from time to time. Jiayan shook his head and smiled. I occasionally realized that it is impossible to inspire such a defensive formation. This matter is the result of your own hard work. There is no need to pass the credit to me. Leda didn't reply, just smiled, and hugged her paws again. The relationship between the two parties gradually broke through the traditional sense of superior and subordinate, and became more like friends. Come on, sit down. Jiayan originally wanted to target Leda's body and help him defend. After all, although it was only the fifth dimension, for mid-level galactic experts and those with non-subspace talents, there would still be a large energy loss when entering. Not anymore. Leda used the defensive power of the formation, which was a power that even he could not master well. It was not a problem at all in the mere fifth dimension. Leda hugged his paws again, sat down inside the subspace, and looked around from time to time, obviously feeling quite satisfied that he could enter the subspace with his own power. Sir, these are the disciples I found this time. I believe these disciples will be of great help to our research. Jiayan casually opened the document handed over by Leda. The distortion power of subspace could easily break the document into pieces, but with his innate ability of subspace, it was impossible for the document to be damaged even a little bit. After reading the document, Jia Yan nodded slightly. "You can do the work, I don't worry, let them be our main research subjects this time. And how do you feel now?" The reason why Jia Yan asked was very simple, that is, Leda himself was also one of the research subjects this time. The difference is that the disciples are considered low-level research subjects, while Leda is a galaxy-level high-level research subject. And he himself is one of the research members, so he can feel the results more intuitively and easily. But the risk is also greater. This is also the reason why Leda has the new power characteristics of the formation, but Jia Yan has not mastered it. It is because of Leda's advantage as a test subject. If his results stabilize, Jia Yan will naturally be the next one to learn it. Rock. The two of them were deep in subspace, silently discussing the progress of the incident. At the end of the discussion, Leda finally couldn't help himself and asked what he wanted to ask. "Sir, have you investigated the origins of the so-called alien galaxy-level powerhouses?" Jia Yan looked at him and shook his head. "We haven't investigated clearly yet. As they are galaxy-level, my mental control cannot control their minds. To be honest." Without waiting for Leda to say anything more, Jia Yan said bluntly, "Actually, they don't need to explain. You can probably guess where they come from. This is the only place in this area that is stronger than Shenxi's forces." Jia Yan said. Leda suddenly realized. That's right, the Shenxi forces have all been educated by Yin-Yang Dao. Even if other forces originally wanted to take action against the Yin-Yang sect, they would restrain themselves after learning the information. And for those who dare to keep people in the Yin-Yang sect after knowing about the incident of rising evil forces, there must be no other choice besides that place. Is that there, sir? This matter is a bit tricky. Jia Yan calmly waved his feet and said softly, "It doesn't matter, Leda, let's get out of the superstars. There are so many people of the same level within those two superstars. Instead of peacefully resolving grievances, if you really want to go to war with me, he won't get the best of you. My subordinate is worrying too much." Leighton nodded and laughed. Indeed. Leda's worries are completely unfounded. In the North Star, Jia Yan did not deal with too many people of the same level, or simply did not encounter any lower-level domain lords of the same level. However, in the turbulent South Star, he heard that Jia Yan had fought with several powerful people of the same level. In the confrontation, there was even someone whose strength was vaguely superior to Jia Yan's. Under that situation, didn't Jia Yan lead the two little kids and escape from Narnia Star safe and sound? Why should they be afraid of the lower ranks of outside domain lords that even superstars dare not enter? That's right, Jia Yan and Leda coincidentally thought of the largest force entrenched nearby, an overlord with a lower-level domain lord. Of course, the other party should also be testing whether the Yin-Yang Dao exists in the lower levels of the territory lord. After confirming that the Yin and Yang Dao has that kind of existence, whether it is war or peace, they may also have a headache. Then sir, I will take my leave first. I will take this matter seriously and will not let them destroy the disciples' practice. Okay, I'll help you. Jia Yan's attitude towards Leda is very friendly, rather than treating him as a subordinate. This made Leda feel like a man who knows his friends will die, and after holding his claws, he swept out of the subspace. Deep in the subspace, the huge black mosquito silently paid attention to the scene outside, then shook its head slightly and disappeared into the depths of the subspace. He had an expectation that the Yin-Yang sect, which was not in much danger to begin with, would enter a more dangerous situation because of his appearance. The battle for the lower rank of Domain Lord is by no means as simple as imagined. Even though Jia Yan had argued or fought against 3 or 5 powerful junior territory lords in Nanjing Star, he still had no hope of defeating even the weakest junior territory lord. A small victory or a small loss is not considered a real defeat. Every person who becomes a powerful person in the lower realm of the territory lord is far from being as simple as imagined. I can't say, I'm going to go to that force in person, sit down with that friend, and explain that I have no intention of starting a fight with him. Jia Yan knew that if he hadn't gone there in person, the other party wouldn't believe it. Go over and explain in person, and the other party will probably be able to accept this kind of face. Thinking of this, his eyes flickered. Just be afraid, this so-called friend has been deceived by someone and is full of hostility towards me. Now that things have happened, he has nothing to be afraid of. The worst case scenario is just a show. It's not like I haven't fought before. Afraid of an egg. Keep the tools and report to my office tomorrow. Is there any news? Thank you, senior. After splitting his words, later returned to his place of teaching students in the Yin-Yang sect and quickly sent hundreds of messages. Everyone who received the news was as happy as if they were celebrating the new year. But they seemed to have ignored what Leda once told them. This opportunity is more likely not an opportunity, but a probability of death or injury. It was as if they didn't think they were going to die. Leda doesn't care about this. He just passes on intelligence and news. How the disciples solve the problems at home and whether they are too optimistic are not his responsibility. A new path requires massive samples. It would be quite a surprise to him that more than half of these disciples would be killed or injured in the end. The casualties are within the allowable range, and the ones that produce results and have greater benefits are probably only a few. This is enough. The sample data that I and Your Excellency need are definitely up to standard. Leda was in the professor's hall, closing his eyes and meditating. Not long after, the outside world was bustling, and a large group of Yin-Yang sect disciples arrived with their families in tow. Among them are people of high status, such as deacons, stewards, and those who hold a powerful position. There are even direct disciples like Lan Kuo. There are also some disciples with low status who don't even have family members. Most of them are only at the earth level, and there are only a few at the heaven level. Come in. The door opened without any wind, revealing the dark venue inside. The disciples were already very familiar with this scene, and they filed in one by one with their heads lowered and silent. Behind them were a large group of their family members. Although their eyes looked happy, they could not hide their worries. Who can forget the dangers of research? In fact, no one has forgotten it, but the opportunity this time is too great. Even the high-ranking deacons and stewards, and even the main sect, have deliberately downplayed the danger and won such a chance to change their appearance and squeeze into the upper class of the hidden road. Chance. You're looking great. Leighton naturally also noticed those respective family members outside. He immediately understood that this was another difference between the central star field of the Milky Way and the outside areas. Their families sent them as guinea pigs, and they were all happy with them and regarded death as if they were home. In his hometown, those family members would have been in a quarrel long ago, unwilling to let the outstanding disciples of the clan die. Please ask Senior Leda to change our fate against the will of heaven. Several people in front of the disciples paid respectful greetings. They are the most powerful among the disciples, among them is Lan Kuo, a junior star, and there are 3 internal bosses of the Yin-Yang sect selected by Leda deliberately at the last moment, who are also existences with star-level strength. These 4 are excellent specimens. They also know the danger, but they are willing to give up their status to come. This can only be said that they deserve it. The central star field of the galaxy is the most outstanding place in the entire galaxy. Leda Gujing looked at the disciples below calmly, then shook his head. He knew that some of these disciples were destined to never leave this door, but he didn't see even a trace of fear on their faces. Just follow me. Leda led the army of disciples who followed him step by step. Hundreds of disciples seem to be a large number, but any one of them is selected from countless disciples to fight. During the training period of more than a month, each of them had at least entered the gate of formation cultivation and had the foundation of orthodox formation cultivation. Otherwise, they would not even be able to enter this gate. When Leda led everyone into the depths of the shady training hall, everyone felt a biting and terrifying power that enveloped them instantly. This is. The disciples couldn't help but stepped back several steps. Each one's expression changed wildly, and they looked around in confusion, but found nothing. What a terrible pressure! Is it a real strong senior? Or is it coming from some kind of dead thing? Lan Kuo was in the center of the crowd and suffered the strongest impact. After his expression changed several times, he couldn't help but release the power of the formation, plus a yin-yang magic weapon given to him by the yin-yang master in the past. He could withstand the impact of this mysterious pressure. Leda just looked at the scene of disciples staggering around in front of him in silence, and said nothing as coldly as ice. After a while, the disciples finally got used to the pressure, as if they were drunk, and managed to stand in front of Leda. Very well, you are all determined people. Leda rushed somewhere in the subspace and clasped his fists respectfully. Some of the disciples were smart, and they quickly thought of something. Their expressions changed, and some of them imitated Leda's salute. It's just that inside the subspace, everything is silent, and there is no response from any sound. Leda didn't care about this, but after saluting, he looked back and looked at the disciples in front of him. Okay, now I will teach you the array gene cultivation method. Let's start with the Earth-level disciples first. Yes. Upon hearing the name of this cultivation method, the hearts of the disciples jumped wildly. They had long vaguely learned from Leda that those who passed the training and elimination would have unimaginable opportunities to change their lives. But now, they finally understood where this so-called opportunity to change their lives lies. Formation gene training method. Could it be that the power of the array is used to modify the genes of the physical body? Isn't it true that looking for the book can, to a certain extent, get whatever kind of talent you want? Some people want to understand this, and their hearts are filled with enthusiasm and desire. If it really has that kind of effect, they will definitely modify their talents into peerless geniuses. Don't be too ambitious. Nothing can be achieved overnight, let alone reach the sky in one step. Leda suddenly shouted loudly, waking up all the disciples who had been imagining things. It was like a slap in the face. Many people laughed bitterly. That's right, there is no way in the world that there is a cultivation method that can reach heaven in one step. They are just wishful thinking. However, Leda, who shocked everyone, was thinking secretly in his heart. If the effects of this array gene cultivation method are as amazing as our design, it would be no exaggeration to say that it would reach the sky in one step. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Buletin Yu. Chapter 3076. I just don't know which of these disciples are lucky enough to get such an opportunity to change their lives. Leda listened intently, as if he had received some kind of instruction. The disciples' eyes quickly followed Leda's pause, and a burst of blue light appeared, and the exquisite power of the formation revealed its most precious color. Every disciple is looking at the power of this formation with longing and hope everywhere in their eyes. This is their greatest wish to change their fate against nature. Now, the first batch of disciples are coming forward. I will teach you how to transform the genetic array. Yes. The first batch of Earth-level disciples stepped forward one by one with extremely solemn expressions. They all know that they are just a touchstone to set a precedent for those who come after them. The probability of death is extremely high, and it can even be said that they have a narrow escape from death. But before Leda recruited him and others, he made it clear in advance that among the many talented formation disciples, their talents were at the bottom, and the condition for them to enter the final quota was to make them the first to be tested. This group of people enjoyed it very much. Of course, there are also those who shrink back, and they may be regretting it in their own family at this moment. This group of disciples looked forward to death and came to Leta's body that was more than 20 kilometers long. "Sit tight, now you get out of the queue." Leta stared at one of the prefects, who wavered for a while, then became firm and approached Leta resolutely. "I remember you, Bacon. You are the most diligent among all the disciples. If something goes wrong with you during this trial, I will protect your family." The other party suddenly smiled with relief. "Thank you, Senior Leta." After saying that, he looked like a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Leighton nodded and taught him the principles of the array gene technique. All the disciples looked stunned after hearing this. They quickly understood the magic and power of the array gene technique, and they were even more enthusiastic. Bacon himself nodded calmly after listening. He knew that others might still have a chance, but as the first pioneer, he would never survive. Buzz. A somewhat twisted formation circle appeared at the edge of Bacon's body. Leta fixed his gaze and suppressed this unstable formation with his own formation power, helping him integrate the formation energy into his body. Well, Bacon started from the very beginning of his skin, imprinting extremely tiny small formation circles into his own cell genes. Leta is even more crucial. Without his help, Bacon would not be able to complete the conversion of even one genetic cell. But even so, the number of failures was extremely high, and large small explosions burst out inside the opponent's body. Bacon described it as miserable, sweating profusely, and soon entered a state of serious injury. Leta couldn't help but pause for a moment, but quickly calmed down and continued his behavior. "Senior, please remember the promise that Senior made to me." "Of course I will remember it. You can go with peace of mind." Under Leta's promise, the other party cheered up and continued to carry out the genetic transformation with gritted teeth. A large number of small formation cores entered his genetic cells, changing his body into a physique that was almost perfectly suitable for the formation. However, more and more of them failed, and more than half of his body turned into blood mist. Inside the subspace, the numerous compound eyes of the giant Mosquito stared at the scene intently. He was quickly analyzing the pros and cons and shortcomings. Well. Suddenly, one of the hundreds of millions of cells controlled by Leta almost exploded one after another. This patch of cells is where the body's vital organs are located. If you burst that, Bacon, you will definitely die. An invisible force suddenly descended from within the subspace and enveloped the area. Both the disciple and Leta experienced the terrifying power and immediately calmed down. Leta ignored the out-of-control power and allowed the experiment to continue. Bacon was seriously injured and dying. His eyes stared at the depths of subspace for a moment, and finally said lightly, "Senior, please remember my family." A response quickly came from the silent depths of subspace. This was a voice that looked like a young man's. It answered his words solemnly, "I promise you." After saying that, Billy's vitality disappeared rapidly, and soon large areas of cells burst open, and in the blink of an eye they turned into a piece of powder. Even flesh and blood no longer existed, and dissipated into the sky. Wright's face looked a little ugly. This was the disciple he had taught for more than a month, and he was the one who worked harder among the disciples and left a deep impression on him. "Oh. Next, Cai, it's your turn." The next female Earth-level biological powerhouse walked forward with her head held high. "Two seniors, I also want my seniors to take care of the family for me. She is not afraid of life and death." Leighton nodded expressionlessly, and there was no response from the subspace. But this female colorful butterfly seemed to be recognized by the two of them, and the big stone in her eyes seemed to disintegrate in an instant. 5 minutes later, this relatively beautiful and powerful female creature also drifted away in the wind, but she lasted much longer than the previous one. The numerous test subjects below were already looking at each other, some with ugly expressions, some with perseverance, and some with wandering eyes, indicating the intention of retreating. However, no matter which kind of eyes entered the door today, they were destined to be unable to escape the end of the experiment. Next, the casualty rate will gradually decrease, and your chances of getting a chance will also increase step by step. Even if it doesn't work, those who survive by chance will be able to gain a greater understanding of the power of the Tao, and from now on it will be a piece of cake. Leda saw that 2 disciples in a row had died, and everyone was seriously shaken, so he couldn't help but say a word of comfort. Jia Yan is still deep in the subspace, silent. It's my turn next, Leda Senpai, please let me try. The 3rd disciple has a firm look in his eyes. He is a person who is extremely pleading and extremely firm towards the way of the strong. But even so, he still only made it to the last step. He might have survived by just a hair's breadth, but because he didn't study the genetic array in depth enough, he died in the middle of the research for such a psyche. Leda sighed inwardly. Jia Yan's face in the subspace is still as usual, but his feet recording notes are already a little dignified. But just before the disciple died, Jia Yan suddenly realized something. He quickly drew out a few key points on his notes. A little surprise flashed in his compound eyes, as if he had discovered something key. Very good. The adult behind you has found a good solution to the danger. Your chances of survival have been greatly improved. Please come up next. Leda listened carefully, and then said to everyone with a slight smile. The next person was a man who was greedy for life and afraid of death. After hearing this, he came to the stage with doubts. This time he succeeded. After wailing for nearly 10 minutes, he discovered that he was not dead. Half of the cell genes in his body had array reactions. Oh, it's a pity that your child almost became a person of chance, but with half of the formation gene success rate, you will make greater progress on the road to formation in the future. Go down and have a good rest. With this person's success, the eyes of the remaining disciples suddenly became several levels more intense. Of course, for Leda and Jia Yan, this disciple's success cannot be said to be a real success. Even if there is formation reaction all over the body, if there is no fate-changing effect, and if the talent improvement is not as expected, it will be a failure for them. Everything is difficult at the beginning, but at least completing this experiment can be regarded as a shot in the arm for all the disciples. The attitude of the latecomers became enthusiastic. Puff. Another disciple turned into powder and the light dissipated. Leda said expressionlessly, Penji, die, next one. There was an endless stream of latecomers, and Leda gradually fell into an expression without any emotion. If something is repeated too often, it becomes a habit. This is true emotionally, and even more so in terms of skill proficiency. Because Leda himself is also one of the researchers of the formation, his control over the formation may be stronger than that of Jia Yan, so this time he will be the chief surgeon, followed by Jia Yan, accompanied by Lai. Leda's skills gradually matured and improved, and his mastery of key points became more and more proficient, and fewer disciples died at Leda's hands. Just when Leda succeeded in possessing the genetic ability to modify the formation that was half dead and half alive, his eyes suddenly moved while he was transforming a top Earth level disciple. Nearly 90% successful. He looked at the disciple in front of him. This disciple's expression was serious. The extremely painful transformation process only made his expression even colder. Your talent is good, and the transformation has been successful. Although it is less than 100% perfect, you will definitely be an outstanding underachiever in Yin and Yang Dao in the future. Please retire and rest, and then someone will arrange for you to wait to become one of the direct successors. The disciple with an extremely cold face couldn't help but show his sincere joy after hearing this, nodded respectfully, and left the stage. His appearance, and what Leda said, caused an uproar among the remaining disciples present. You must know that at this time, about 30 disciples have developed, but without exception, they failed to get the approval of Senior Leda. This person succeeded, which shows that even if he is not a true cell gene array converter, he is infinitely close to that path. The rest of them were shocked, and they all looked at each other, their expressions becoming extremely expectant. Next person. It's a pity that you failed to transform more than half of the formation genes, but your future formation path will definitely be even better. The next one. Ghost step, die, next one. In Leda's indifferent, cold, or silent words, time passed quickly. Some people live like years, some people are restless, and those who pass are either dead, disabled, or lucky enough to be safe and sound. Those who have a better chance have not only obtained the talent of formation gene transformation, but also obtained he became the personal disciple of Onmyeto and soared into the sky from then on. Success and failure, death and life, were undoubtedly revealed during this experimental body test. Well, just when the whole process began to become a bit formulaic, Leda started to transform a disciple with poor talent, and the other party tried his best to cooperate. He only felt that the fit between the two parties was unstable, and the other party's formation talent was too poor, and he was about to death results. At the same time, Jia Yan inside the subspace, after watching on the sidelines for so long, took action with thunderous force for the first time. Groan. An aura that was far more astonishing than Leda's, surged out from the subspace, covering the disciple who was about to explode. If he firmly stabilized the opponent's body, the energy that Leda had transformed inside his body would also. It was as if time stopped and everything became quiet. Jia Yan took a lot of time and calmly corrected the mistakes, and then his strength receded like a tide. Leda looked inside the subspace, nodded secretly to Jia Yan, and continued his operation. And the disciple who was lucky enough to survive was sweating profusely. He couldn't even feel the external force coming in that moment. After all, the difference in strength between the earth level and the lower level of the territory lord can no longer be described by the gap. It is simply the difference between gods and mortals. Very good. Although your body failed to transform into the body of the formation, you still survived. From now on, you will be more prominent in the power of the formation. Thank you, Senior. The other party obviously also knew that with his understanding of the formation and his talent, he had a narrow escape just now. Now that he survived, in addition to being grateful to luck, the senior in front of him also needed to be grateful. After this person retreated, the others became even more enthusiastic. That guy's formation power is not good, his talent is mediocre, and his attitude is not quite right. He was just thinking about escaping, but he didn't expect that such a guy, who was bound to die, survived, which shows that Senior Leda, as I become more and more proficient in research, my subsequent survival rate should be much higher. Facts have proved that the truth is exactly as everyone expected. Leda is becoming more and more proficient in his methods. The survival rate is also getting higher and higher. Jia Yan, who was behind the scenes, kept the secret and used all kinds of measures when unexpected situations occurred, finally increasing the survival rate by 30%. When it came to the last 100 prefecture-level disciples, only 7 of the 100 died, and the survival rate exceeded 90%. Among them, more than 50% of the array gene disciples were created, and even more, there are more than a dozen people, who are close to 90% of the array genes, and there are 2 more people. These 2 people have almost reached the level of direct disciples. Some are happy and some are sad. The dead have no emotions, and those who have failed to obtain even 50% of the array genes have no choice but to go to the resting place in despair, waiting to be transferred out of this area. But they don't know that even if they fail, because of this unexpected encounter, they will have amazing achievements in the practice of combining the power of Yin and Yang Dao in the future. Some of them, by coincidence and their own perseverance, will be comparable to weaker direct disciples. Disciple is no problem either. Of course, this matter is a matter of course. Sir, the transformation of all Earth-level disciples has been completed. I wonder if we can start the transformation of heaven-level disciples. Wait a moment, I will sort out the experience and pass it on to you, so as to avoid any accidents as much as possible. Yes. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 3077. The disciple and Leda waited respectfully for another half an hour outside the subspace. Only then did Leda receive a brainwave power speech picture from within the subspace. His eyes flickered, he nodded from time to time, and sometimes solemnly, and often put forward certain opinions. The two discussed for a moment, and Leda finally pointed to a heaven-level disciple and said, "Come up." Yes. Soon, the heaven-level disciples were completely finished. There were not too many accidents this time, but the number of casualties among the disciples was slightly more than that of the prefecture-level disciples. It's easy to understand. The stronger the strength, the more difficult it is to change one's destiny against the will of nature. Among the more than 200 heaven-level disciples, there is another one with a 90% conversion rate that is enough to become a direct disciple. Next is the Starry Sky class. Of the more than 30 Starry Sky level, 6 of them unfortunately died, and none of them successfully transformed into more than 90% of the array genes. At the Venerable level, Lugu came out alone. His eyes were calm, ignoring the nervous glances of the people around him, and not caring about why the beasts and several other Venerable level direct disciples who were watching not far away did not come out to the front. There is no fairness in life. In order to obtain a status similar to that of Beast and others, he risked his life this time. Keep the tools. Did you know that the success rate of the Venerable level is even lower? I know. Ryagai respectfully held his paws towards Leda and gave him a very respectful gift. Okay, is there anything you want to do? Ryagai's gaze rested on Leda for a moment, and he opened his mouth to reveal all his hopes. Senior Leda, apart from the family, this junior has no other requirements, but now, a strong thought arises in this junior's heart. If this junior survives by chance and the conversion rate is not low, I ask senior to accept this junior as his disciple. Leda was a little surprised. He didn't expect Lyoji to make this request. However, he didn't say anything else. He just pondered for a moment, then nodded and agreed. After his wish was fulfilled, he put a smile on his face and walked to the front desk without fear. 20 minutes later, 2 slight sighs sounded from the front of the stage and from deep in the subspace. In front of Rita was the broken body of Ragu, a determined disciple who had long since lost his vitality. No matter how strong his willpower was, he couldn't let destiny take more care of him. Lugu failed, and he failed even when Leda and Jia Yan tried their best to treat her. Venerable level disciples will die. Leda said expressionlessly, but everyone could feel the presence of this teacher and senior who had always been indifferent, and his emotions fluctuated at this time. Below are several other venerables. Leda deliberately let the least privileged retainer serve as the first venerable level test subject. His original intention was to protect those venerable level people with family backgrounds, but at this time his tone was cold and chilling. The disciples at the rear looked at each other in disbelief. Under the gaze of everyone, a venerable level man finally came out belatedly. Don't worry, I won't do anything irrational because of my personal emotions. We certainly believe in our seniors. The other party nodded and came to the stage. With the instrument as a test subject, this time it was more successful, but this venerable level disciple still turned into cosmic powder with a shrill howl, and died beyond hope. Both Leda and Jia Yan in the subspace looked a little ugly. The more powerful the being, the more difficult it is to transform genes. The degree of difficulty is many times higher than that at the Earth level. It is definitely more than 100 times. Leda was about to call the next person when a pair of front feet suddenly stretched out from the subspace. These feet covered the sky and the sun. The size of the outstretched feet was as huge as Leda, the strongest person present. It can be imagined that the feet, what an amazing physique the real body has. I will also give you a helping hand. Jia Yan's voice came from within the subspace, neither sad nor happy. Yes, sir. Leighton nodded. However, the surrounding venerable level testers who had been hesitant and suspicious at first felt a little joy again after staring intently at the huge feet. The feet are longer than Raita Senpai's entire body. How strong must such a Onmyado Senpai be? If he takes action himself, wouldn't the effect be much better? The possibility of death is also greatly reduced. But they didn't know that Jia Yan had used mental power to attack in the venerable level test just now, and even if he stretched out his feet, the effect of the mental power attack was not much different. It could be said that it was just an eye-catching effect. That's all. But this effect is to give all the experimental disciples confidence, which can be considered helpful. I'll be next. Another venerable level emerged from the crowd and walked calmly in front of Leda and Jia Yanzu. Well done. Both Leda and Jia Yan knew this man, who was a member of a large family in the yin-yang section. He could have been ranked a few lower, but his willingness to take risks in the front showed that he had a good mind and outlook on life. Another 15 minutes later. The disciple was shaky, hugged the feet of Leda and Jia Yan, and stumbled into the rest area under the guidance of the attendants. He succeeded. But that's only half the battle. The conversion rate is horribly low, only a little over 40%. It will be helpful for the future power of the formation, but it will not help so much for one's own cultivation talent and the genetic activation of the formation. If the lifespan is increased, it can probably double its lifespan. This is an unimaginable increase for ordinary creatures, but... Leda looked inside the subspace worriedly. The mistress is Lord Satsuma, and her strength is also at the venerable level. This is why Jia Yan took action personally and worked so hard on this venerable level experiment. The following star level experiments are aimed at the young master and the others, because there is no limit to the lifespan of the young master and the others, so it is actually not too important. It can be said that the success or failure of the venerable level experiment is very likely the key to the success or failure of the entire experiment. A conversion rate of more than 40% is not enough. Jia Yan's voice came calmly from within the subspace. Leighton nodded, of course it's not enough. It's difficult to chase perfection, but we still have to aim for perfection when we're looking for results in the experiment. Next person. Several honorable level people came out in succession. And their results were not that satisfactory. The casualty rate has been reduced, but the success rate of converting it into array genes is not high. But the successful ones were overjoyed, probably because they got the results they wanted. After all, even if the transformation of the Lord level strength is only a minimum of 10% or 20%, coupled with the power of the formation, there are endless weird ways and methods. The enhancement of this 20%, I am afraid that the enhanced strength will not only make their body stronger by 10% or 20% more, making it possible for them to double or triple their strength. Of course, that is only if you work hard and learn the power of powerful formations. But Jia Yan and the other two were not satisfied. The next venerable level experimenter is. Leda looked at the last two people left behind, his face suddenly hesitated, and he looked deep into the subspace. Jia Yan also remained silent for a long time. But as the subject of the experiment, he took the initiative to come to the stage. This person is one of Jia Yan's disciples. Among the major disciples, his talent for the power of formations is quite good, and his own talent is an extremely outstanding unicorn in the backward starry sky, beast. Senior Leda, and this senior, I am willing to accept the consequences of failure, and please seniors not to care about my life or death. Beast's eyes were extremely clear, and his pursuit of power, pursuit of the outer starry sky, and pursuit of the greater strength of yin and yang Dao made him put life and death aside. Very good. You are so open-minded. Your master did not choose the wrong disciple. It was very rare for Jia Yan to transmit the sound from the subspace, so that this disciple could hear it. Beast was flattered and quickly hugged the horse's legs as a tribute. Let's start. Leda said expressionlessly, and Beast quickly held his breath and concentrated. Although he also looked down on life and death, it was impossible for him to come to die. His inner thoughts still believed that his luck, talent, and opportunities were not bad. It will definitely succeed. Buzz. As the energy of two extremely powerful existences invaded his body, Beast felt that his body was in pain. The two powers first washed away all kinds of impurities in his body, and then found a safer area and began to work on cells and genes. Inside, the power of countless tiny formations is spread out and buried inside the body. It is really easier for disciples with good talents to immerse themselves in the power of the formation. Jia Yan and Leda were both stunned. They looked at each other silently, nodded, and continued their operations. The beasts felt that their eyes were about to burst. A large number of genes were decomposed, buried in formations, and then reassembled and arranged. Most of the process was automatically completed by the power of the previously buried formations. Otherwise, even Jia Yan and other late-level domain master wizards are unable to disrupt and recombine the genes of powerful cells that far outnumber the planets in the galaxy. In other words, the perfected array genetic ability will naturally have the effect of changing one's destiny. However, without the guidance of a strong person, it is impossible to achieve perfection, and those who have their destiny changed need to have good abilities. The formation talent is used to repair oneself, otherwise it will inevitably result in being shattered into pieces. Beast remained motionless, as if there was an intense conflict inside his body. He gritted his teeth, and used his supreme willpower to insist on not letting himself faint. At the same time, he used the stabilizing power of the formation he had recently learned, with the help of two peerless masters. Next, he is improving his genes and burying a large number of formations. This time, it didn't last any longer than those before. Under the nervous, disdainful, or sinister gazes of many people around him, after 15 minutes, Beast fell down from the stage with a pop. He's not dead. He was panting, but his eyes were extremely bright, and he couldn't help laughing. It's hearty and refreshing, and it feels like brushing away the grit from your eyes. So that's it? This is the world where true talent exists. Thank you to my two mentors for their help. The beast stood up, and the power of the formation on its horn combined with the thunder and lightning, making a crackling sound. Compared with before, its strength suddenly increased several times. Is this a success? Do direct disciples have stronger talents and a higher chance of success? The people below looked at it with big eyes. They didn't know what the final result of Beast was, but judging from Beast's reaction, it should be extremely successful. Very good, very good. You are indeed a genius. You have transformed 92% of your formation talent, which is only a little short of perfection. Such talent is enough for you to change your life against the will of heaven. Not only is your formation talent amazing, but also your own cultivation talents, as well as yin-yang Dao cultivation talents, will usher in a period of rapid growth. Congratulations. Leda looked at this yin-yang sect's youngest direct disciple with great satisfaction. I used to think that Lord Jia Yan was a clone of yin and yang and collected some disciples with ordinary talents. I was a little confused. Now I know that even if Lord Jia Yan is just a clone, I am afraid that he is looking at the long term. Once this disciple transforms his talent, it is very likely that he will soar into the sky in the future, and at last he will be a galaxy level. After being grateful, Beast looked at the other venerable behind him with a smile, indicating that he didn't need to worry and be afraid, and turned around and left the experimental area. As he left, everyone's eyes finally turned to the last person. This venerable level person is very small and very young, or in other words, he is just a child. She is Adisha, who took on the appearance of a little girl from Earth. After watching all the transformations of the venerable level, Adisha's big eyes flickered, she laughed and jumped up to Leta's eyes. The behemoth, which is more than 20 kilometers long, is like a mountain to a little girl who is just over 1 meter tall. Leta finally had an uneasy expression on her face, stared at the doting girl next to the adult, and asked, "Miss Adissa, do you really want to personally participate in this experiment? If you have any ideas, you are completely free. We can wait until the experiments are more mature." Aditha's big eyes flickered, she blinked, and she shook her head vigorously. "No, Adisha thinks this time will be great. Adisha can't wait." No one knew why she was so anxious. Leta can't make the decision in this matter. The life of this little ancestor is of no small importance to Shiyuan. Her status in Lord Jiayan's mind is probably about the same as that of his wife and children. Turning his gaze to the subspace, the silence in the subspace lasted longer this time. After a moment of silence, Jiayan faintly said, "Let's begin." "Yes." Leighton nodded, took a deep breath, stared at Adisha, and the power of her brain waves surged out. At the same time, Jiayan's energy also burst out from behind, no less enthusiastic than Leta's. He really didn't dare to let anything happen to Adissa. "Otherwise you will regret it for life." Of course, Jiayan still has his own reasons for agreeing with Adisha's behavior. First of all, Aditha's body is different from others. The components are more artificial and are arranged in an extremely neat manner, which makes it easy to operate. Moreover, her talent is good, so the success rate should be high. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 3078. Secondly, Adisha is by no means impulsive. She must have had her own plans and calculations before taking the initiative to sign up. When the two of them moved forward and backward, pouring the power of their brainwaves into Aditha's pretty little body, their voices changed. It turned out that there was already some kind of strange power waiting on the surface of Adisha's body. When they arrived, this power enveloped the energy of the two powerful men and sent it to the main directions of the body. "Brother Master, Master Leta," Adisha looked at it for a long time and summarized these modification methods. "You guys have a try." Adisha's sweet and lovely voice sounded in their ears. Only then did the two of them realize that the power that Adisha met them with was the power of the formation. The subsequent process became very strange. The two most powerful people who were supposed to be the leaders turned into helpers. Adisha's control over her body was completely better than anyone else's. After all, this body it was designed and manufactured by herself in the era of intelligence. She knew every atom, every molecule, every cell, and even genes like the back of her hand, and she was extremely familiar with it all the way. Under her leadership, Jiayan and Leta finally began to feel that their experience, far beyond that of others, was growing rapidly. It can be said that Adisha observed the experiences of others, combined with the mastery of her own physique, and developed a more mature version of the array gene conversion technique that directly surpassed Jiayan and Leta. As for why she didn't stand up earlier, maybe she could have prevented some of the deaths and injuries. Nonsense, she wasn't sure before, maybe she would be the one who died if she did that. Adisha is not stupid, she is shrewd. Buzz. Everyone was stunned. A burst of blue formation's brilliance leaked out, and others were either wiped out or seriously injured. Even the worst, they were extremely weak and stumbled. And Adisha, the real descendant, who is rumored to have a status that is far superior to that of the Yin-Yang clan, actually accepted the physical improvement of the genetic array in an understatement in front of everyone. He walked down the platform calmly. This. Even Leta stood on the stage with his hands tied, his eyes full of shock and surprise. Jia Yan pondered for a while inside the subspace, and then shook his head with a smile. This little guy. It really surprised him every time. Onmyodo is personally transmitted to Edisha, and genetic improvement is a complete success. Leda paused, smiled in relief, and announced Edisha's results in front of everyone. At this moment, the whole audience was stunned again. There were so many geniuses who tried to go up just now, but they all failed one by one. But this little girl who had a great reputation and rarely showed any peculiarities during her time in the yin-yang sect, and even often did some naughty things, actually surpassed everyone and reached the perfect level of formation genetic improvement. For a moment, everyone looked at Edissa, filled with various emotions such as surprise, envy, jealousy, and hatred. However, her talents and abilities are still recognized by everyone. Perfect level, I thought that it would be good news if she could get close to over 95%. I didn't expect that she would directly replace her whole body with array genes. In this way, her talent is no longer a problem. Jia Yan looked at Edisha from deep in the subspace and smiled suddenly. Editha's life characteristics are very abnormal, her brain is good enough, she is shrewd enough, and her abilities are all kinds of powerful. However, before today, Jia Yan never regarded her as the seed to cultivate a truly strong person in the future. Limited by her talent, it is impossible for Edisha to reach the realm master level in her lifetime, even at the galaxy level. But that was before. Now, relying on her own research on the formation Dao and her understanding of the yin and yang Dao, she has successfully converted into the formation Dao genetic talent in front of Jia Yan and the two of them. With the unlocking of this talent, she will have a bright future in the future. The stronger you are, the more terrifying your talent is. In other words, the shackles that locked her talent no longer existed. From now on, it's up to you whether you can leap like a fish in the sky, or you still have constraints. Jia Yan looked squarely at this smart little girl, vaguely seeming to see the birth of another legend besides himself. Yes, in his life of more than 100 years, although he has met countless powerful people, Jia Yan's pride and cultivation experience make him look down on everyone. Perhaps those who are more powerful than the real domain lords, his life experience is no worse than his, but after all, he doesn't know any of them yet, so he always only regards himself as the protagonist, a true legendary life. After Edisha obtained the perfect level of array genes, it seemed that another legend no less than that of Jia Yan had begun. There is nothing unhappy about Jia Yan. Originally, in this world, the waves behind us should push the waves ahead, otherwise there would be no stamina. What's more, Edisha is a life form cultivated by herself, no different from her own daughter. Leda, you can see clearly that Edisha's consummation process is an extremely important reference for you. Jia Yan's voice reached Leda's ears. But he received a bitter shake of his head and a chuckle in reply. Miss Edisha's life form is too special. I'm afraid no one else in the world can copy her approach except herself. Edisha is the reincarnation of a brain-intelligent being with unprecedentedly powerful computing power. The process just now is not so much that the two of them are helping Edisha, but rather that they are following Edisha's guidance and helping her place cells and genes into the array. Law, with the support of such calculation power, the formation talent will naturally come naturally. Leda wants to learn. Let's start by installing a supercomputer in our head. But Miss Edissa has given me a lot of experience and summary. I think it will increase my success rate by at least 10% when it's my turn. That's good, let's continue. Next is the half-star level. Yes. The two men continued their operations. The disciples of the yin-yang sect with half-star strength have become powerful figures. Although it is impossible for the two of them to take a second look at a person with this level of strength, without them, the yin-yang sect may breed some unrest. Fortunately, Edisha's guidance made the two of them understand what many perfect array talents should look like. After coordination, the transformation process of the semi-star level genetic array that should have caused more casualties unexpectedly saved many people. Of the 12 half-stars in total, only 2 people died, and among the survivors, there were 2 with more than 60% genetic completion. This was not easy for a half-star. The following is a star level. The mortality rate of a star level is probably extremely high. You are among the top people in the yin-yang section. I will give you a chance. If you withdraw now, you can forget about it. No one will hold you accountable for waiting. Back off the charge. Leda took the matter seriously and came to the last few stellar powerhouses. In the whole place, dead and gone, only these 2 stars and Leda were left, and they were no longer as lively as before. The violent wind of cosmic radiation swept across, and everyone was silent. It seemed that all the stars were in some kind of struggle. Suddenly, an elderly star laughed loudly. "That's all, I have lived for more than 2,000 years. If there is no chance of promotion, I will only live for a few hundred years at most. Instead of waiting for the final day to come, I would rather trust these 2 seniors." He walked out calmly, with no sadness, no joy, no longing in his eyes. This kind of death attitude. In front of everyone, the fate of every new strength test subject is death, which has not changed since the Earth level. He knew he was going to die, but he still stood up. This is an atmospheric festival. Leda couldn't help but secretly respect him. The star level is only 1 step away from the galaxy. Decades ago, not long before he came to the central star field of the Milky Way, he was only at the peak of the star, so he still had considerable empathy for the other party. "Then get started, punk, I'll remember you." "Thank you, senior." The other party smiled and seemed to look away a lot. Bang. Half an hour later, as a blood mist exploded and the formations shone with light, this old star-level powerhouse turned into the basic particles of the universe amidst the size of Leda and Jiayan in the subspace. Dust to dust to dust. It's me next. I'm ashamed to say that Punk and I are close in age, but I just felt like shrinking back. The next star level is not young anymore, and he smiles with relief. Another half hour passed, and the old man followed in the footsteps of the punks, dissipating with the cosmic wind amid bursts of brilliant blood mist. 2 seniors, let me try it now. Suddenly, a figure who shouldn't have had his turn blocked the other 2 leaders of the forces and stepped out in person. This is Lan Kuo. Among the stars, he should have been placed at the last place and the safest, but for some reason, he walked out in person at the 3rd place. Leda wanted to say something, but after looking at the other party's clear eyes, he suddenly understood. Edisha is already ranked last in the venerable level. If the privileges of direct disciples are brought to the stellar level, it may be one of the sources of internal conflicts within the yin-yang sect in the future. The star level is not just a random little player, the other 2 are also the main strong men at the top of certain factions. Okay, have you memorized the techniques of the gene formation Deo? Back to senior, I have remembered it clearly. Then come up. This time Leda was very alert. Although the person in front of him was not Jia Yan's disciple, he was a clone disciple who was not much different from his real disciple. He didn't want to disappoint Jia Yan here. This is especially true for Jia Yan himself. As the transformation began, Leda's internal flaws and talents were clearly visible to the 2 of them. Sure enough, this disciple is suitable for the power of the formation. With the assistance of Jia Yan and Leda, Lan Kuo continued to superimpose countless formations on his genetic level, working hard to improve his genes, and he had to maintain a certain speed, otherwise he would self-destruct. The star-level physique and the number of cells and tissues in the body are far from being comparable to those at the Earth level or Heaven level. Let's put it this way, the number of body tissues and cells in a blue circle is more than the sum of all the disciples under the previous star level. Not to mention the resistance at the stellar level, cellular and genetic level, and it may be 100 or 1,000 times more difficult to engrave the formation. Despite this difficulty, the three of them did not give up, and time flew by bit. Finally, after 2 hours that far surpassed that of ordinary disciples, Lan Kuo was shocked all over. Failed. The remaining 2 stars looked ugly for a while. If even a direct disciple like Lan Kuo could fail, it means that the risk factor of this experiment is far beyond their imagination. At least at the stellar level, there is no need for them to continue. But in their eyes, Lan Kuo only twitched a few times, and his shaky body was suddenly stabilized by Leta's mental power. Lan Kuo fell into a coma and showed no signs of death. He was sent down below by Leta and asked to be taken down by a half-star attendant to rest. Lan Kuo, the initial strength of the star, the degree of genetic conversion -80%. Leta reported Lan Kuo's results, which made the 2 stars look up. Lan Kuo has reached a conversion rate of 81%, which is great news. They do not require themselves to reach Lan Kuo's level. They only need to know that Lan Kuo succeeded and the conversion level is not low, which means that they also have a chance of survival. This is enough. Those who took the initiative to enter this experiment had the intention of risking their lives. All they wanted was to see the possibility. They would definitely not be willing to die without a chance of survival. However, if there was a hope of a narrow escape, they would be willing to try. Let me do it. A young and powerful man stepped onto the stage. Another long and nerve-wracking 3 hours. In the end, the star's left arm suddenly exploded, and he fell from the high platform. Although he was disabled, he was not dead. 11 Dion, stellar mid-level strength, conversion rate of 35%. Although the fallen star was disabled, his face was full of joy, and he seemed to have received a great opportunity. He bowed respectfully to the subspace and Leta, and was led down by the half-star attendant. It's my turn. Please take care of me, 2 seniors. The last person saw 2 people of the same rank succeed. Although there were casualties, the opportunities were equal. In the future, the disabled person would definitely soar into the sky, and his heart suddenly became hot and he flew to the stage. Bear. However, things went against expectations. This last star turned into powder amidst a burst of violent explosions. His expression was frozen on a smile that made his dream come true, and he returned to the universe. Well. Finally, Leta shook his head gently again. I'm afraid Jia Yan himself doesn't think too much about these disciples, because they are just strangers to him. But Leta has personally taught each one of them, and they are considered half of his registered disciples. Now at least half of them are killed or injured. In his opinion, it is also a melancholy thing in life. This is their own choice, you don't have to be too sentimental. Yes. Jia Yan's voice sounded in the deserted test square, and the 2 started talking. The matter here is over. I should have led you directly back to the Orion arm, but now there is another thing that I need to do. You should sort out the harvest here. Leta, you know, next that is you. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 3079. Listening to Jia Yan's seemingly emotionless words, Leta trembled all over, took a deep breath, and nodded sharply. My subordinate understands. In fact, the experience provided by this group of disciples finally led to a real test subject, who was also the final experimenter of the gene conversion skills of the entire array. That was Rita himself. Each level has a template. Logically speaking, the experience and conditions are mature. However, he is not an ordinary strong man, but a galaxy intermediate. The difficulty of the star level is definitely hundreds of times higher than the galaxy level. 1,000-fold improvement. Whether he lives or dies depends on how successfully he can convert these experiences. Jia Yan gave him time, which was considered the most benevolent thing. Deep in subspace, the giant mosquito had a cold face, and sitting on top of its huge body was an exquisite little girl. She is Adisha. Two people, one large and one small, shuttled into the depths of subspace and arrived at a palace as big as a planet. Adisha landed lightly on the huge, flat, and smooth ground in the hall, her eyes flashing, and the power of the formation appeared and then disappeared in her eyes. Are you sure you don't need to train in the yin-yang sect for a period of time? Jia Yan asked calmly and angrily. No need, Adisha feels better than ever. Aditha jumped up and down from Jia Yan's body. She was countless times smaller than Jia Yan's body, like a flea. Watching her stretch out and look relaxed, Jia Yan didn't know Adisha's purpose or thoughts for a moment. What is certain is that her physical condition is by no means as relaxing as she said. Genetic transformation is an unprecedentedly huge burden on the physical body. If you don't rest, it will be quite uncomfortable for the spirit and spirit. It's not much different from Jia Yan's every mutation. To some extent, it may be a more dangerous and difficult process. But she took the initiative to go with Jia Yan. Jia Yan silently returned to his throne, knelt down, and looked at the little guy who was also sitting in a meditative state. Under Jia Yan's guidance, the palace began to move slowly. This time, Xiao Yuer was also handed over to Leta's care, and there was also the intention of letting Leta sit in the center of the yin-yang sect. Jia Yan took away Adisha, who wanted to be with him life and death. Anyway, the little devil's physical condition was pretty good, so if he let her rest more, the effect would be similar to that of special training. Jia Yan entered into his memories and reviewed the previous experiments of dealing with thousands of yin-yang sect disciples scene by scene in his mind. These experiments are his extremely valuable experience, and this is all because of this busy work. Time flies. The palace sailed deep in subspace for more than 10 days. On this day, Jia Yan closed his eyes and meditated, but he saw Adisha blinking her big eyes, standing up from sitting cross-legged, taking a deep breath, humming and playing a few sets of her own Adisha Shakwan. After a moment, his bright eyes and white teeth looked at the mosquito as huge as a mountain in front of him with a satisfied smile. Master brother! She shouted with a milky voice. Jia Yan stared at her for a moment and asked, what's the matter? Adisha showed a sly smile and said mysteriously, Adisha has mastered a very profound genetic theory of formations. Do you want to teach master brother? Have you mastered the advanced gene theory of array formations? Jia Yan's first reaction was disbelief. He and Leta had been tinkering for so long, at the cost of the lives of hundreds of yin-yang sect disciples, before they made a major breakthrough. What profound theories could Adisha master? But then I thought about it. As the only perfect converter in the entire experiment, it was not impossible for this little guy to use her mind to simulate and develop a more profound formation theory than herself and Leta. What do you think? Adisha seemed elated and satisfied that she would be able to explain the practice to Jia Yan. She sat down again and began to talk. Jia Yan's expression, from the initial one with a bit of disdain, gradually turned into a kind of uncertainty, then seriousness, then turned into a bit of surprise, and then when he looked at Aditha, he was a little surprised. In just one day, Adisha's long theory was explained under the intertwining of Jia Yan's various emotions. Her speech was extremely meticulous throughout, with almost no verbosity at all. If it were any other life form, even the most efficient and powerful person would probably need 3 to 5 times as long, or even longer, to say so many things. So at the end of the day, Jia Yan's mind was full of things, as well as many mathematical models and data that he had little understanding of. Adisha, did you figure this all out yourself? Finally, he was silent for a long time and asked with some sigh. Yeah, but a lot of it was said by Master's brother and Leta. Adisha listened to you mention it for a long time, so she wrote it down and thought about it. Adisha looked in high spirits, as if she had done something great, her little breasts were raised high, and she was very proud. In fact, she did something quite remarkable. It seems that you do have shocking talents in the formation. Jia Yan clicked his tongue in amazement, and felt a little ashamed of himself. This is not to belittle oneself, Jia Yan knows that his talent is also very strong, even outstanding. But when it comes to work with a huge amount of calculations, such as formation path, it is far from being comparable to Aditya, a unique life form reincarnated with an intelligent brain. Therefore, the theories proposed by Adisha were really profound. Those that required mathematical calculations, he could not draw a conclusion on whether they were right or wrong for the time being. But in terms of results, he secretly tried several of the models and thought they were right. With the introduction of your theory, the genetic array has been improved by at least 30%. You have made a great contribution to this matter. He, Adisha deserves a lot of credit. Adisha is so awesome. The little guy smiled and boasted. Jia Yan suddenly understood why Adisha wanted to go out with him instead of staying in the yin-yang sect to cultivate. It turned out that she wanted to tell Jia Yan her theory as soon as possible. Jia Yan's eyes softened a little. Although this little guy may have great future prospects and talents, he still treats him as a relative when it comes to treating himself. For this reason alone, Jia Yan has not regretted at all for creating such a terrifying existence. Okay, you don't need to brag anymore. The formation talent has been converted, which means that the talent limitations on your body have almost disappeared. You must practice hard in the future. If you delay for too long, I will be angry. Yeah, Aditya knows. Aditya will work hard to practice. Aditya jumped up and down, happy for a moment, and then sat down to practice obediently. Jia Yan fell into the depths of his mind, reorganized the theory proposed by Adisha just now, and began to verify it. He tasted it several times, and it took him several days, and finally he couldn't help but sigh in amazement again. The formulation of this theory is simply not something that the human mind can come up with. Mathematical models have been used in countless small details, and many subtle details have been added to commend the person who put forward this argument, not an ordinary person. If the yin and yang Dao were to develop spontaneously and reach this level of detail, it would probably take several generations. It may even take more than 10 generations. Aditya finally fully combined the advantages of intelligence and life, becoming an independent existence between the two. She even had a hand in this, but it's not a bad thing, just a little cleverness on her part. Jia Yan couldn't help but feel warm in his heart and burst out laughing when he saw some reminders. It turns out that the reminder models and algorithms above these key points are all deducing the key points that need to be paid attention to when a certain powerful being converts genes. And this so-called some powerful being in the theory has a strength of the lower level of a domain lord. That's right, Aditya's theory is filled with all the aspects that need to be paid attention to when calculating genetic transformation for Jia Yan. Regarding gene conversion techniques, Jia Yan didn't mention it, and Leda didn't mention it. Everyone agreed not to discuss whether Jia Yan himself had any need to convert genes. Dare not mention it. The casualty rate at the Earth level is that high, and the galaxy level is probably close to death. The transformation of the domain lord's lower level power is no different than sending one to death. Anyone who mentions it would be doing Jia Yan a disservice. At this point, it seems that he no longer needs to use this almost suicidal method to improve his strength. But Aditya was different. After watching Jia Yan grow up, she knew that this master brother would never let go of this path of increasing strength. Even if it's not recently, at some point in the future, he is destined to make the decision to risk his life and change the formation's genes. That's who he is. Humph, Brad, are you convinced of my idea? That's so audacious. Jia Yan deliberately snorted in his mind, but silently memorized those assumptions and calculation formulas word for word in his mind. He didn't say what he was using it for, nor did he admit that it was for future preparation. "Brother Master, we are almost at our destination." Editha suddenly opened her bright and moving big eyes, and a sly smile appeared on her pitiful and lovely face. However, Jia Yan knew that the palace had been parked nearby for more than a day, and Adisha also knew that Jia Yan was absorbing the harvest, so she didn't call him until now. The two of them had a tacit understanding and said nothing. Jia Yan stood up and was about to walk out of the palace and fly to the destination of his trip. Suddenly he looked down and trotted with his short legs to follow him step by step, trying to follow the little girl out of the dimension. "Adisha, you can travel for a year. In this power, I will wait for you for a year to make a name for yourself. Otherwise, you don't have to come back." Ah! No matter how powerful Edissa was, she would never have imagined that Jia Yan would say such a thing. Adisha, who had hardly been separated from Jia Yan since she was born, had a nervous look on her face. "Adisha doesn't want to travel. Go, you can freely grow into an adult when you come back. After all, you are still a child. I'm sorry for your talents and abilities." "Oh, then, okay." Edisha remembered that Jiolin in the creation world, the Jiolin she always played with, had already created some estrangement when they met before they set off to the central galaxy of the Milky Way. In fact, Jiolin gradually became a young girl. But she has always acted like a little girl, and it is normal for the two sides to be separated. But when she grows up freely, she can play together again. And children really have no dignity. Without saying anything, Edisha looked in a certain direction outside the subspace, pointed over there and said, "Then Edisha will go over there." Jia Yan nodded along the direction pointed by him. "Well, it's really not close to the center of this force over there. It's good that I can be less scrupulous about my performance if I'm away from the main conflict here." After saying this, the giant mosquito suddenly waved its front legs and gently swept Edisha out of the palace. Editha is wrapped in spiritual power, which protects her from the damage caused by the distortion of subspace. Ignoring the little devil's short hand waving vigorously, Jia Yan silently looked away and sighed softly. Children will eventually grow up, and restricting their growth is the last thing a parent should do. Jia Yan realized it. You are getting old after all. A grandfather who is more than 100 years old can still chase the title of the longest-lived person before the interstellar civilization started. He comforted himself, and his expression quickly returned to Gujing Buobo. Taking elegant steps, the giant mosquito's whole body shone with soaring momentum, slowly walking from the depths of the 10-dimensional subspace to the shallow outside of the subspace. He is a top-notch strongman who runs rampant all the way to Fenglinhuo. Not to mention ordinary domain lords, even if he passes by a powerful senior domain lord, as long as Jia Yan thinks about it, it will be difficult for the other party to notice that such a figure is coming in the subspace. Great God! But he couldn't do it. Because the leader of the force entrenched at his destination is also a lower-level territory lord. Jia Yan sneaked in secretly, and maybe without getting close to the opponent, there was still a chance that he would not be noticed. But this time he was visiting in a palace as huge as a planet. Then there's no hiding it. The other party must have already sensed his arrival. Otherwise, there is no way to talk about the lower level of territory lord, and Jia Yan will not regard him as his top enemy. But facing such an existence, he was still unafraid. Boom 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 boom. Subspace surges. Gravitational waves surge. The normal starry sky on the outside suddenly began to boil, as if unusually hot boiling water was dropped inside the starry sky. A visit from a powerful person in the lower realm of the territory lord, just by releasing his momentum, he can cause terrifying power like a natural disaster. After the astonishing momentum that destroyed mountains and mountains exploded in the starry sky, countless exclamations and roars came from the endless universe around. An unknown number of powerful people, travelers, businessmen, and ordinary mortals living on nearby planets came and went, exclaiming as if they were facing a superior god. The pressure from above the life level makes them feel as if death is imminent, and even the basic particles of life may be crushed into powder in an instant. I'll wait and see you, Senior. Under the influence of the shocking weather situation where the stars were trembling and the sky was about to overturn, a soft yet strong voice suppressed the entire precarious sea of stars. Like a sharp spearhead, it broke through the heavy momentum and suppressed the rising sea. The shocking aura was slightly delayed. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 3080. A mere senior territory lord can break the momentum of a lower territory lord, so he is considered a ruthless character. Although it is not Jia Yan's all-out momentum, his courage is enough to show his ambition. Before the group of people who spoke out arrived, Jia Yan casually restrained part of his momentum, flew out of the subspace, remained silent, and stared at the arriving army of creatures from afar. It's really an army. Thousands of powerful creatures, including domain lord level, galaxy level, and star level, totaling no less than 10,000. Jia Yan was a little surprised to see such strength and quantity. How could ordinary forces have so many high-quality experts? A huge army of strong creatures came to this area and confronted Jia Yan, a strong man. However, it was not Jia Yan who was nervous, but the tens of thousands of strong men. As the lower-level forces of the Territory Lord, they have a deep understanding of the strength of this powerful level. Even though there are so many people here, even if they are tied together, they cannot be the opponents of each other. Senior, please don't take action against the people of this force. The person who broke through Jia Yan's momentum earlier was a large green wildebeest with righteousness. He looked at Jia Yan with bright eyes and said, "You know that I am the lower rank of the Territory Lord, but you dare to look directly at me like this. Are you not afraid that I will kill you?" "I don't dare. Seniors can kill juniors like me easily, but seniors will not kill innocent people indiscriminately." "You are quite eloquent," Jia Yan sneered and said coldly, "is it because you came here at the request of that friend? Do you have the honor to meet with him?" "Of course there is, Senior, please." Thousands of strong men breathed out a sigh of relief, as if they had saved their lives. Under their leadership, Jia Yan slowly flew out of the starry sky and headed towards a dense area. That starry sky is where the energy of a new star gathers, and the master of this force usually practices there. Your force is the so-called Shuxing force. It's a good name. I wonder why Lord Shuxing didn't show up to meet me in person. Jia Yan was completely dismissive of how grand this force was and how advanced its structure was, and he was just picking on the opponent. He came here fully prepared to compete with this force. Naturally, there are countless reasons to find. The fact that the leader of the opposing force refused to show up in person to greet him was also a reason for starting a war, which Jia Yan could use later. Of course, it is difficult to destroy such a force with one person's power. At most, it will make the other party panic, and at the cost of the life of a domain master, they can finally make peace. Edisha has long since moved away, and no one must know of her existence. After harassing her for about a year, he will be able to achieve his goal and lead the completed Edita to fly away. This is the purpose of Jia Yan coming here. I'm sorry, this senior of Yin and Yang Dao, the master of our forces, has been in seclusion for many years and has never come out. Even if another junior domain master visited more than 100 years ago, my master never personally greeted him. It's quite high profile." Jia Yan snorted coldly. The wildebeest creature looked ugly for a moment, hesitated to speak, and finally endured it. The powerful creatures behind him were also filled with righteous indignation. Anyone who spoke ill of their master in front of them would not be too happy. And Jia Yan not only said that, but also wanted to go to the training ground where his master was and call for punishment. Everyone knows the purpose of the other person's arrival. It's because of the yin-yang sect. A few days ago, their master, that is, the most powerful territory lord's later level being primary star, issued an incredible order, asking them to send spies above the galaxy level to a place called Yin-Yang Zone's forces conduct an investigation. I thought they were the same level of forces, but I never thought that after various investigations by the senior officials of the Chuxing force, they discovered that the so-called Yin-Yang sect was just a small backward force in the starry sky within the influence of the Chuxing force. I'm afraid I can't even find a galaxy-level person. However, they did not dare to disobey the Lord's wishes and sent several small galaxy-class people who were good at exploration. What happened next made the upper echelons of the Chuxing forces feel their hearts pounding. They knew why the Lord paid so much attention to the Yin-Yang sect, because several of the spies sent there quickly disappeared. You must know that it is a galaxy level. The mysterious disappearance of the Yin-Yang sect, which should not have a galaxy-level strong person, shows that there is a big problem with that power. I originally thought of continuing to increase the intensity of the investigation, but I didn't expect that on this day that had never been carried out, the Lord suddenly sent a decree, saying that a master of Yin and Yang Dao was coming, and asked his subordinates to arrange a grand occasion and go to the designated place to welcome him. As a result, the troops who rushed to the scene with great enthusiasm failed to give the opponent a blow, but they gave their own side a blow. Because the existence that greeted us was actually a lower-level domain lord who was no weaker than his own lord. At this moment, the entire Chuxing force was in a state of panic, as if facing a formidable enemy. When Jia Yangjing walked through the outer edge of the nascent star material area, he clearly saw that a large number of nearby troops were rapidly mobilized, and there were countless nascent forces deploying methods, including scientific power and some from strange practices. The power of force. Even if this force does not have a junior territory lord, it is not a problem to resist the offensive of another territory lord. Tisk tisk, the foundation of a true superpower is indeed extraordinary. Jia Yan nodded to himself, not caring whether there was any danger. The strong are the strong. Nowadays, he has mastered more and more methods of the lower-level territory lords, and has also been trained with combat experience. The power of formations can be considered to be able to show his edge in the battles of the same level. He thinks that he is not afraid of anyone of the same level. As for those ordinary armies and weapons are just like decorations due to his subspace talent. In the dense matter of the newborn star, a large amount of energy, matter, and radiation are intertwined and stirred. Let alone ordinary earthlings here, even if they come to a venerable level, it is impossible for them to survive. But for those who are above the star level, it is like the most suitable training place, which is hard to come by. What's more, this nascent starry sky is located in the central star field of the Milky Way. The terrain is excellent. Being able to occupy such a geomantic treasure spot shows that the capabilities of the nascent star force are far beyond imagination. Under the guidance of the senior domain lord beside him, Jia Yan passed through the fog and entered the deepest part of the clouds, and soon saw the person he wanted to meet. This was a behemoth, roughly similar in stature to today's Jia Yan, and over 50 kilometers tall. However, it did not look like an insect. The muscle tissue all over its body was quite thick, and its weight was estimated to be 5 or 6 times that of Jia Yan. Many. There are 6 heads in total, 3 of which are extremely weird, with long pointed fangs and a hideous face. The other 3 are blind, one has no mouth, and the last one has a slightly kind face. Jia Yan was slightly curious and looked at all the heads. These heads gave him a feeling of dissonance, as if several of them did not belong to the body and should have been transplanted from other places. Friend of Onmyedo, I should call you Jia Yan, right? The seemingly amiable head opened his eyes, looked directly at Jia Yan, and his voice was low, with no trace of sadness or joy. Jia Yan was also calm, and said calmly to the head, It turns out that my friend from Chuxing also knows the name of a country person like me. I am Jia Yan. The other party calmly glanced at the senior domain master next to Jia Yan. The subordinate understood it and saluted both of them, then stepped back and left the place filled with dense energy. I also invited my friend Jia Yan to come over and meet me. As you can see, I am indeed practicing and it is inconvenient to leave. Good. Jia Yan didn't doubt whether there was a trap or anything like that. He stretched his body into the dense depths and felt that his whole body was extremely hot. He couldn't help but marvel. I have long heard that in the universe, there is a nascent starry sky that contains great energy, but I have only heard about the reputation and never seen it with my own eyes. Now I know that there is such a paradise. It is better to see it than to hear it 100 times. He was right, in this starry sky, he felt a desire that made his body scream. It shows that this place is of great benefit to the lower level of the territory lord. But Jia Yan was not blinded. He is no longer the impulsive little mosquito he used to be, shouting and killing for a little resource. Moreover, even if there are any good resources, they are no longer important to him today. What the lower level domain lords really need to improve themselves should be those adventures that make them realize something. If Jia Yan really wanted these energy boosting things, he could easily get them by drilling into the interior of certain stars, but they were not so easy to digest. Your Excellency, Jia Yan is joking. For us, this so-called cave heaven paradise is just a mere improvement. The kind-hearted monster's face showed a smile, looking directly at Jia Yan, making it impossible to tell what he was thinking. Jia Yan nodded, without comment, and his body was already close to the six-headed monster. Visible to the naked eye, the other party's kind-faced head gave off some danger signals. The other 5 heads were not careless, and each of them seemed to be unable to open their eyes. I was afraid that if Jia Yan really did something, the 5 heads would wake up instantly. This is a fellow of the same rank. It is obvious that the first star monster is not as calm as it appears on the surface towards Jia Yan. Jia Yan stopped with a smile. One test can reveal a lot. At least Jia Yanmen knew that the opponent should have not fought for a long time, or in other words, had not fought against the same level for a long time. Otherwise the attitude wouldn't be so tense. On the contrary, it is impossible for an existence like Jia Yan, who just stepped out of the galaxy superstar and came to the outside world with the experience of fighting against several lower-level domain lords, to show such a nervous expression. I can't say that I'm not nervous, but my attitude is not like that. There are subtle differences in it that are difficult to explain clearly. I can only understand it. The other party's expression changed again. He was not a fool and understood the purpose of Jia Yan's deliberate actions. Testing myself. Both sides were smart enough not to mention it. Jia Yan stood calmly at a safe distance and said bluntly, "Your Excellency Chuxing, you should know the purpose of my coming. I wonder what you did to our yin-yang sect. What is your purpose? Now, how are you going to compensate me?" "Good guy." Chu Xing said fiercely in his heart, "What a good guy. As soon as I found out that I have little combat experience recently, my attitude suddenly changed. This so-called master of yin and yang Dao really doesn't look like a master of the Tao. Completely scoundrel." Chuxing was almost stunned by this blunt statement. How many years have passed since he became a powerful person in the lower realm of the territory lord? He has not encountered anyone who looks down on him. Even if they are of the same rank, the public relationship between us is that of a superior god. The harmony on the surface is certain. No matter how we scold each other in private, it is difficult to show such a Philistine in public. But the person of the same rank who came in front of him was different. He simply felt like he was looking for trouble. "Your Excellency Jia Yan, you are joking. I am sending strong men to the yin-yang sect because I am concerned about the emergence of mysterious forces in the area under my command. This is normal operation for any powerful sect, right? What's more, I heard that your force in this secret confrontation, we did not suffer much loss. However, you seem to have personally killed several major galaxy-level members of our force. You must know that the galaxy-level subordinates are not just flowers and plants on the roadside to us. I didn't cause any trouble for you, but you came to me personally. I wonder if this means you look down on me. Jia Yan looked at the 6 monsters up and down and suddenly laughed. Yes, I just looked down on you. As he spoke, the other party's face suddenly darkened, and the other heads opened their eyes one after another, and their training also stopped. They all focused on Jia Yan with evil eyes. Your Excellency Jia Yan, why do you say this? At the lower level of the territory lord, who would say such disrespectful words without hesitation? It's not that there are none, but there are very few. Even if there are, they are among the enemies and ourselves who have been feuding for many years. It's rare to see someone like Jia Yan who starts spraying directly when he sees a stranger of the same class in 100 years. I would like to call him Jia Sprayer. Jia Pen's eyes almost showed that he was choosing others to devour, looked at these 6 pairs of eyes, and their tone also turned cold. You understand what it means. As someone of the same level, I look down on you, you piece of trash. These heads were all taken from the senior domain lords, right? I didn't expect that the so-called strongest person in the first Star Force was actually like this. You're a crooked guy. It's easy for me to look down on you. Now, I want to ask you, how are you going to resolve the Yin-Yang sect matter? If you don't give me a satisfactory response, your 5 stolen heads will, let me eradicate them one by one for you. You. The first star became ferocious, with 5 heads raised high. The already vicious ones were even more terrifying. The relatively peaceful ones also began to show their fangs and horns, and an overwhelming offensive would erupt in the next moment. Puff. He was still pretending, but Jia Yan didn't say a word and took the lead in attacking. The front foot fell, and a blue ray of light came out, and the circle formation turned into overwhelming magical power, directly encircling this large area. If you don't accept it, just do it. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 3081. The agitation originating from far away in the starry sky is overwhelming, vast and lasting. A small, insignificant child, floating in the shallow layer of subspace, with a pair of eyes full of intelligence and wisdom, looking forward and behind him from time to time. She knew that the master's brother was fighting with the unfamiliar territory lord in the back steps. This is the real strong man. Editha was very mechanized in the past, like a ray of understanding appearing between the brows of a truly intelligent person. As a living being for many years, she finally gradually got rid of the mechanical way of thinking of her brain and became more humane. I can also understand many profound issues. Brother, Master sent Edisha out. Edisha's purpose is to become a stronger formation master. Editha nodded her little head. 1 year is neither long nor short. She must seize the time this year to achieve the purpose of experience. Go there. Editha pointed to a certain direction, and moved towards that direction with the power of her formation in a very spiritual way. Puff. Not long after, Edisha flew out of the subspace. This place is more than 10 light-years away from the battle between the 2 superpowers. The first Star Force is by no means completely monolithic. This is a 3-dimensional area within the first Star Force, and Edisha is most suitable for training here. The little guy had a look of thought on his cheeks. He stood obediently in the starry sky, looking here and there, then pursed his mouth and flew to a certain place. Edisha needs to practice. According to the algorithm, this is very useful. Stop, you little devil, are you a special being, or are you still very young? An earth-shattering roar sounded, and a towering figure like a mountain appeared in front of Edisha's eyes. Suddenly, an earth-shattering momentum burst out. Edisha is a unique life form, and she is also very young. Adisha looked at the other person without fear, her little eyebrows furrowed, looking very confused. Why did this person stop me from practicing? It was really bad. Adisha only has 1 year to fully unleash the power of the formation. It will be a very stressful year, okay. The visitor was a gigantic creature at the pinnacle of a star. Just now, this creature was patrolling in the sky and found a little girl wandering alone in the starry sky. If something went wrong, there must be a monster, so he stepped forward to interrogate her. Sure enough, there is something weird. Where are you from? Adisha comes from far, far away. What are you going to do here? I want to experience it. Experience what? Experience is experience. Come with me. Never. Adisha didn't have time to communicate with such a local star peak, and tried to help him by saying that she was helpless. She had a look of indifference on her face, so she had to go around the other person's body and fly to another place. You're only at the venerable level, you still want to run away. The being at the top of the star shouted in a deep voice, and a wing swept across in one piece. A large amount of spiritual power spread between the wing feathers. He had no intention of harming the child, because the child's vitality was extremely strong, and he was obviously just a child. He was afraid that it was a child from a big family who slipped out to play, and it would be difficult to explain to him if he got hurt. In the Chuxing forces where the strength of the strong is unfathomable, it is possible for those truly big families to train their children to have a few minors with venerable level strength. Bad guy. Adisha yelled, and the layer of array power surrounding the surface of her body quickly rotated away from the body. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a diameter of several kilometers comparable to wing feathers, and collided with the wing feathers without any tricks. Boom! Above the sky, the wind and clouds changed color, and a terrifying power that was no less than the peak of the star emerged inside the formation circle. I saw the winged man staggering, retreating dozens of kilometers with a strong look of disbelief in his eyes. His wing feathers were severely damaged by the blow, hanging to the side, unable to move. Let's see if you still dare to stop Adisha. Aditha held out her index finger angrily, and the giant formation that spanned several kilometers flew into her finger and disappeared into her fingertips, as if it didn't exist. This is not the strength of Adisha. It is the power of the formation that Jia Yan sent Adisha to travel. Even though the energy of the late domain lord sealed in it is only a mere force, under the seal of the formation, it can support Adisha for a long time, as long as she does not face the domain lord level. Adisha can use it to defeat the above enemies. As expected, he is a member of a big family. What kind of move is this? The winged man suddenly stopped moving forward, watching the little guy turn into a ray of light again, and the power of the formation appeared under his feet. He borrowed Jia Yan's formation propulsion ability to fly forward, and his speed was not slower than him. Forget it, let me report to the superiors that such a gadget shouldn't cause too much harm. In Xingyu, he is still in his own power territory, just a child. Even if he is an outsider, he cannot become a big influence, not to mention the greater possibility that he is a child of a big force within Chuxing. On the contrary, this child's strength is really intimidating. The wing-feathered man looked at his scarred wings and gave a wry smile. It might be embarrassing to report a work injury, so he would just treat it himself later. Aditha went deep alone and quickly sank deep into the no-no zone. Half a month later, in a chaotic place deep in the three nowhere zone, it is said that 2,000 years ago, the old ruins of a powerful man who followed Master Chuxing and fought against them were excavated. A large number of powerful men and powerful people gathered on the mountain tops, and there was a sea of people. Among them was a small and cute figure, inconspicuous in the crowd. Miss Adissa, look, with a team like ours, do we need to compete with them? Yes. Adisha has figured it out. If you go from that way, you will definitely not be able to get in from here. Adisha was sitting on a first-level Star Warrior, bossing her around, with her nostrils raised to the sky. In the past half-month, he had imitated Jia Yan very well in the Sanguine area, recruited some strong men as his subordinates, and easily found out a lot of things. He also stepped in today, preparing to compete with other forces for the remains of the strong men. Matter. Atisa-sama is still reliable. 5 or 6 subordinates, all with stellar strength, have gained a certain reputation in this area, but they are still impressed by Atisa. In terms of strength, this little kid who seemed to be at the level of a venerable gave them a huge fright. His rank was in vain in front of him. Not to mention the family heritage that Atisa occasionally displayed, only that she herself combined the formation from time to time. The power of the Tao, the formation Tao used towards the outside world, is enough to defeat the vast majority of stars. In terms of intelligence, they are even more like computers, and they have managed several of them to accomplish several major things. At this time, he led them from a corner that no one cared about at all, going around, and actually entered the depths of the ruins where the remains of the strong man were buried. It is said that this area is the place where the powerful senior deliberately asked Master Chuxing to rely on his dying spiritual power to provide a place for younger generations to compete for opportunities. How could we break into the core area so easily? Even Master Chuxing, I didn't expect it at first. It's all thanks to Lady Atisa's perfect plan. Aditha was being sought after by 5 or 6 stars, her little face became arrogant, and she had a lovely image of a young and mature person. Go there. Aditha pointed to a certain place in the starry sky and found the right path easily. A stellar player was careless while flying and fell into the black mist around him. He screamed fiercely and was swallowed by the black mist. The sound flew away quickly, and he lost his body in an instant. He brings it to himself. The expression of a star who was following Atisa changed, and he got closer to Atisa, not daring to move at all. Yes, he brought it upon himself. He dared not listen to Lady Atisa's words. After this mistake, everyone felt as if they were facing a formidable enemy, but nothing happened after that. They passed many difficulties smoothly. Over there. It's the remains of that senior. Are we the first to arrive? No, there are others. Atisa led everyone along the winding path into the deepest part, and found that there were already several groups of people there. Oh! There are actually other people with the senior's bloodline. Several groups of people inside were confronting each other, and they were slightly surprised when they discovered the appearance of Atisa and others, but they were not too surprised. They are the descendants of the senior and can easily integrate into this area. In other words, the remains themselves give future generations the greatest advantage. The so-called competition does not exist at all. It is just a matter of changing methods, giving some support to future generations, and letting ordinary strong people put pressure on them. Okay, now I'm just waiting for a few teams. I guess everyone is the descendant of this senior, or there is a descendant of the senior in the team. Speaking of it, they can all be considered as one of our own. I suggest not to fight. Kill, distribute fairly. What kind of fair method? How about this? I have a very rich bloodline from my senior, and now I still have my senior's handwriting at home. How about letting me devour my senior's body? Damn you, you said your bloodline is strong, does that mean your bloodline is strong? My bloodline is not any worse than yours. Haha, since senior wants us to compete, it's natural that we can't just look at bloodline. It's better for us to rely on our own methods. A group of people turned their attention to the team of Atisa and others, and said calmly, "Little girl, tell me, how are you going to compete with us? According to my opinion, you are still young. At such an age, it is too early to get involved in adults' battles. How about leading your group of friends away? There are also a large number of utensils, priceless training equipment, etc. next to the remains, but the most popular ones are definitely the remains of the strong man that are more than 30 kilometers in size. Those of the same bloodline can easily swallow them and turn them into their own power. Although Edisha is a venerable level child who is not looked down upon by anyone, there are 4 or 5 star level people following her. Even though they are all middle and low level stars, no one in the room dares to look down upon them. As the first family persuaded Edisha and others to retreat, the other families suddenly realized and suggested that she leave with half-smiling smiles. They are still happy to see success without one competitor. Anyway, such a little brat must have no idea. Surrounded by them and unable to stand alone, are he still afraid of causing some waves? But they miscalculated. Yeah, you are all bad people, and Edisha won't leave. Editha screamed and yelled. Don't leave. There will be a price to pay if you don't leave. Among several troops, a leader suddenly showed murderous intent and showed a fierce look in his eyes. Children, if they are frightened, they will definitely cry and leave. Unexpectedly, Edisha waved her little hand unceremoniously, and a series of blue formations lingered from her fingertips. At this moment, more than a month has passed since Edisha converted into the perfect formation gene. More than a month has passed. Because of her perfect cultivation talent, she has broken through the middle level of the venerable and is approaching the lower level of the venerable. Her strength is no longer what it was before. Wusyaman. Haha, it's just a venerable level, not even a half-star level. The expressions of the strong men suddenly turned fierce. After looking at each other for a few times, they involuntarily approached Edisha and the others. They reached a silent agreement in silence: first kill or drive away the little kids team, and the others will follow their own abilities. The team of little girls who had just arrived seemed to be still confused, and unresponsive. No, Miss Edisha, shall we retreat? The expression of the stellar mid-level powerhouse who was carrying Edisha suddenly changed, but he felt a small hand pressing on his heavenly spirit cap. Don't move. The circle of formations that she had previously shot out with her 5 fingers was seen shooting rapidly in the dense land, and came to the side of the group of creatures rushing towards them. How dare you win glory even though you're just a venerable person with a small skill? Court death. The group of strong men cursed and were filled with righteous indignation. A mere venerable level dared to fight back in the face of many star levels. From the perspective of the strong men in the universe, this was treason and completely against family ethics. The top genius at the semi-star level may even be a prodigy who can kill enemies beyond his level. However, against a star at the venerable level, it is too far off. If you dare to take action, it is against the will of heaven. This group of strong men took action with disdain on their faces, trying to defeat the seemingly mighty circle. Then they swarmed up and killed the group of men and the little girl together, letting the weak know that the distinction between strong and weak is irreversible. Unexpectedly, bursts of blood suddenly rained down from the dense clouds. I saw the blue ring directly encircling a powerful man. I quickly tightened it, either cutting off his head or cutting open his abdomen. The invisible blue ring was like a magic weapon. Any star level is cut in two. It is obvious that there are so many strong people, but they are all like lambs waiting to be slaughtered, with no power to fight back. The subordinates, who thought they would be wiped out in a bloody battle, were all dumbfounded and looked at the little girl who led them. This little girl, it was amazing to be able to defeat a star class one-on-one, but now she actually kills a star class like chopping vegetables and melons. It is too outrageous. Editha's sparkling eyes were curved like moon buds, happily admiring the blood rain she had caused, and laughed. She was not prepared to deal with this group of enemies personally, but she did not completely borrow the power given by Jia Yan, but borrowed Jia Yan's comprehensive power. This move is half his own, and half borrows the power given by Jia Yan. The combat power instantly crushes ordinary star level. Experience it? She danced silly and was very satisfied with her performance. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 3082. Half a year. The power of Chuxing is no longer what it used to be. Reliable sources said that among the Chuxing forces, there was someone who could rival Lord Chuxing. During a sparring session with Chuxing, this strong man destroyed the Yunyu star cluster in the center of the Chuxing forces. The two of them struck each other with sparks and lightning. Outside world. In this battle, the powerful first star, a late-level domain lord, suffered a huge defeat. After a confrontation for more than a month, he began his escape journey. Afterwards, the entire Chuxing force did everything possible. With a very shameless attitude, the strong ones came forward. The technological weapons were superimposed with various defensive technologies to expel the strong man from within the force, but left the Chuxing force within the force. What makes people even more troublesome is that the opponent is not an ordinary strong man, but a serious dimensional gifted creature. As countless people marveled, this single-handed supermaster overturned a series of internal arrangements of the first star forces, shaking the world, like thousands of troops approaching the city, and making the nearby overlord first star forces with a radius of more than 1,000 light-years panic. Crumbling, almost falling apart. Finally, after fighting for half a year, Chuxing appeared in person with his body missing 3 heads, and humbly begged the mysterious master to stop fighting. I don't know what kind of benefits Chuxing promised. In short, the other party's attitude gradually softened, and they no longer attacked the masters of Chuxing forces from all aspects of the subspace. Regarding these rumors, the vast majority of people in the Chuxing force thought that they were scoffing and that someone was setting the pace. However, some people became nervous, and based on the changes they saw within the forces, they came to a different conclusion than most people. Fortunately, half a year has passed, and the Chuxing forces have vaguely regained their former glory, which makes those who pay attention to this matter relieved. Not all creatures in the universe pursue chaos and becoming stronger. In fact, most people pursue stability and harmony. The overall general trend of variables is actually not that big for local areas. For example, the impact of the 3 no matters zone was far less than imagined. I heard that there is trouble happening outside, and some big shots are coming to take control of the area where we have nothing to do. Miss Edisha, should we take care of them as well? You iron-headed boy, if you want to die, don't take our young lady with you. The people sent by the Chuxing forces may be galaxy level. How can we compare with them? Hey, what you said is wrong. Why do you think Miss Editha can't deal with the galaxy level? Do you look down on Miss? Don't make any noise, the lady makes her own decisions on these matters. In the 3-0 zone, a group of star-level fans supported a tiny king's carriage, and there was a little girl playing a game on the king's carriage. She calmly looked at the noisy subordinates, thought for a moment, and blinked her beautiful eyes. Then she nodded unexpectedly and said, Edisha doesn't want to deal with people from the first star force. Immediately, the leader and faction echoed, yes, Miss Edissa, our force has just been established not long ago. I think it is better to have a good relationship with the people from the Chuxing force. If you don't want to deal with them, you can send one of us should take charge of the matter. Miss, you see, I am usually eloquent, so why not just let me? Before the stellar star finished speaking, another strong man's joking laughter came from the side, interrupting his words, let you? Hey, you are a new member of the gang, you are nothing, you are targeting someone with what are the possible benefits of dealing with people from the Chuxing force? Miss, this person is not trustworthy, I suggest that I wait for my old subordinate to carry out this matter. Are you going to execute it? Your last corruption case has not been settled yet, and you want more rights. It is simply harboring evil intentions. Miss, you are aware of this. I just didn't report it last time. All those belongings were used to buy Miss your favorite toys. For a time, there was a lot of discussion below, the crowd was angry and spittle flew everywhere. And Edisha was sitting on the head of the strong man at the top of the star that was more than 10 kilometers away. Wang Jio was swaying and looked at the group of strong men with expressionless expressions. The criticism was almost over, and a smile suddenly appeared on Edisha's energetic face. You all don't understand what Edisha means. This sentence brought all the subordinates back to reality. They no longer yelled at each other, but looked at the kid above them who looked like a high-ranking venerable, but whose actual combat power was unfathomable. Edisha has decided not to deal with those people from the Chuxing forces, so Edisha is leaving. Goodbye everyone. Ah. This time, it was really unexpected, even a little unexpected. Who would have thought that this little girl who had just spent half a year and fought several battles to establish her current power would just give up? You little brat, are you going to play house as a child? But given her age, she might just treat these processes as if she were playing house. But she had a great time playing house, but what about so many strong men following her? Wouldn't the tree fall and the hosen scatter? Miss. Please stop, you. The next powerful man at the top of the star couldn't help but speak, but before he could finish his words, he felt Wang Jia's whole head light up. The little girl tore open the subspace, shook her head with a smile, slipped into the subspace, and completely disappeared. Damn it! Leaving now? Why not be so straightforward? A group of subordinates looked at each other directly. Lady Edisha, do you have a talent for subspace? I've never heard of it, and she hasn't used it before. Young lady is really a heavenly being. She actually possesses subdimensional talent despite possessing such strength. This, at least more than doubles her combat power out of thin air. It is truly a blessing to be able to serve young lady. You are still flattering me. The lady is gone. She is really gone. My mental talent can feel that she is tens of thousands of kilometers away. For a time, all the subordinates were in mourning and could not find their backbone. But Edisha, who had abandoned such a temporary power, still smiled so cutely, sitting on the king's carriage, her little baby face full of confusion. There's only half a year left, and Edisha has already been promoted to the high level of a venerable. In the remaining half a year, Edisha will be promoted to the top of a venerable. Brother Master will definitely be happy. Edisha made a decision, raised her hands up carefree, and flew in the other direction. With so many subordinates, she abandoned them as soon as she wanted to, regardless of what would happen to them in the future. Previously, in this Sanjia area, there was a rumor that there was a young life that used a strange ring. I don't know if it is related to that person. On the outskirts of the 3 No Matters zone, a pleasant-looking strong man entered the 3 No Matters zone under the guidance of another 3 No Ones zone strongman. It is said that it is a place with no regard for others, but in fact it is a place deliberately created internally by the Chuxing forces to facilitate the entire force to reconcile conflicts and sell things that are difficult to sell. To put it bluntly, it is equivalent to half of the official family managing it. The creature that came was of the primary level of the galaxy, and what greeted him was the galaxy level of the first star force who managed this area of no concern. Both of them were top-notch in strength, and managed such a chaotic area without any pressure. After the newly arrived strong man explained another mission of his trip, the eyes of the galaxy novice who managed this area of no concern flickered slightly. After a long time, he hesitated and said, "Shang Feng, you must be worried too much. The young strongman who uses this technique first came here half a year ago. I have secretly observed this young body. She is only at the venerable level. Although the skills she uses are not the same as those in the rumors. The one used by the big man is similar, but I am sure that the little girl has nothing to do with him. Is your judgment accurate? It is said that the girl contributed more than half of her income to you. Uh, about this, I'm not sure about this, but since you, Shang Fen, have doubts about his identity, why don't we summon him to see him and ask him face to face? The zinc beginner who manages this place is extremely embarrassed. He did receive money from that power. It's strange to say that when he first saw the little girl's origin and identity, he was obsessed with it, and he also thought about whether the girl had ulterior motives. But when he saw the little girl on the surface, she had a lively and cute personality that couldn't hide anything, and even he was quite infected. In particular, the little girl said that it was just experience and the resource requirements were not high. Half of the resources of the entire force could be donated to this galaxy class, so he agreed. As long as the other party did not do too much, he would tolerate everything the other party did. Now that someone of the same rank as the Imperial Envoy of the Chuxing force was coming, he spoke for help, but the Imperial Envoy was unwilling to listen and there was nothing he could do. You can't lose your future because of that little girl. At this moment, while talking, a subordinate from the 3 No Matter Zone hurriedly flew in front of these 2 first-level powerhouses of the galaxy and reported. Report, that Edisha has left the Ignorance Zone in a hurry, and the method she used to leave, is left. The expressions of the 2 Zing-level men fell, especially the new Imperial Envoy, whose expression became solemn. When he heard the news of his arrival, he hurriedly ran away. What else could this be but absconding out of fear of crime? Even if the other party is not related to the intruder, he has definitely committed a crime. The other person, however, was terrified and shuddering. Now, I am afraid that I have really protected someone who cannot be protected. He quickly asked, what is the way for Edisha to leave? Tell me quickly. The stellar subordinate looked up at the 2 adults and said in an almost mournful tone, the way she left was, subspace. There was a buzzing sound, and the 2 galaxy-level people present felt their minds go blank. If it is said that the circle-shaped ability used by the opponent before was used by other forces in the universe, or it was spread by someone who wanted to look like the big shot who had committed the crime through false rumors, there are still other variables in everything. Well, at this time, the suspect actually used the subspace talent that the big shot knew, and the relationship between the 2 was already obvious. The galaxy class stationed in the Sangui zone felt trembling all over. He looked at his subordinates and then at the galaxy class master next to him. His expression was as pale as paper. He was trembling and could not say anything. Having an affair with the mysterious master who invaded their Chuxing forces was a big deal. He couldn't wait to find a crack in the ground and crawl into it. If Master Chuxing holds him accountable, it would not be excessive to execute him, because this is treason. Quickly investigate, what is the purpose of the larval body, and also investigate her whereabouts. Yes. The stellar powerhouse quickly retreated, fearing that Shang Fen would put the blame on himself, although he did receive many benefits from Aditha's power. As for you, do you want me to go to jail myself, or do you want to be bound by yourself? The galaxy class who accepted Aditha's bribe cried with a mournful face, and finally sighed sadly, I will do it myself. Hunting geese all day long, one day you will be blinded by the geese. He had been entrenched here for hundreds of years, accepting bribes from the powerful leaders of the 301 zone and being soft-hearted. In the end, he fell over this matter. It's just that if you do too much injustice, you will be killed. But the little girl who caused the fate of this junior powerhouse in the galaxy didn't care at all at this time. Edisha, there's still half a year left, I miss Xiao. Edisha was rarely alone, whether in the world of creation or in the galaxy, she always had a playmate by her side. For more than half a year now, there were no children of her own age to play with. Although she had a fulfilling life, she was still inevitably lonely. She now experienced the feeling of loneliness for the first time. Deep in the subspace, the Wangjia that the little guy sat on, although made of ordinary materials, was transformed into a subspace aircraft under the protection of the formation ring. The ring rotated rapidly, resolving the distortion pressure of the subspace, allowing it to sail quickly. And this time the deep space is far from as simple as the first level of subspace. Instead, it reached the fourth floor. This is the subspace ability that Edisha has simulated after converting her array talent. She is extremely familiar with the subspace. As a person in the era of intelligent brain, he leads Jia Yan at all times, operating flying equipment to navigate deep in subspace. It can be said that she knows more about various data in subspace than Jia Yan. Therefore, after possessing considerable array talent, Edisha also automatically possesses the ability to navigate at least 4 levels of space. In fact, it's not just the 4th floor, maybe she'll be at ease on the 5th floor, but Edisha won't do anything that's uncertain. Hineo's nature makes it difficult for her to do uncertain things. To put it harshly, I just don't have the spirit of adventure. I don't know what's going on with Master's brother. He seems to have had a fight with Chuxing, and he was even more powerful than Atissa. Edisha took out the smart brain she was wearing, and saw the data on it flowing quickly. A large amount of knowledge was reflected in the depths of her mind, and was recorded one by one. After reading this, Edisha nodded her little head with satisfaction, determined the location, and flew towards the place she had previously decided. With half a year left, Edisha is ready to give her master brother a small surprise. It's not about cultivation. I wonder if my master brother will be happy after seeing it. Jia Yangjao was unhappy and Edisha didn't know it, but Edisha must be happy herself. Children who are immersed in their own world are often happy, no matter what she does is a serious matter or a naughty child's destructive incident. Someone is thinking about me. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 3083. Someone is thinking about me. At the same time, the huge jet-black mosquito moved its head slightly in confusion among the stars. The perception ability of the lower-level territory lords has already reached the point where they can speak like gods. If someone talks about them, they will occasionally feel something. Jia Yan looked at a certain direction and immediately understood who the person talking about him was. Master Jia Yan, I wonder if you are satisfied with the amount and conditions of this compensation. In front of the giant mosquito, there are several towering figures like mountains, and 2 of them are on par with Jia Yan, not the slightest bit weaker. The 2 lower-level creatures of the territory lords gathered together to face the new junior Jia Yan. But they were facing a formidable enemy, and they did not have the attitude of being superior and looking down on Jia Yan because of their larger number. Respect is earned through strength. No matter whether it is between strong people or national forces, it is nothing more than this. Jia Yan relied on his absolute strength, coupled with the power of subspace, to fight against Chu Xing for half a year, and then to join forces with Chu Xing and Xian Lai, a strong man. With his subspace ability, he was able to handle it with ease. The 2 sides fought several fierce battles, and finally hit the negotiating table. If you have the strength, no matter how big the difficulties and obstacles are, they are just stumbling blocks. Once you kick them away, the sky will be brighter. The lower ranks of the 2 domain lords are exactly as Jia Yan thought beforehand. Their strength is much weaker than the big energy ones on the superstars, but it's not that they are weak in absolute strength, because Jia Yan's confrontation with these 2 has not yet reached the level of risking his life. Even the first star, he killed 3 big heads, and even in a real fight, Jia Yan might not be sure of killing this beast. The weakness Jia Yan talks about is weakness in perception, which is quite intuitive for the strong. The other party obviously realized that Jia Yan was stronger than them in perception. I am very satisfied with your compensation, but I want to know one thing. Jia Yan didn't have time to talk to these people. He went straight to the core point of Shuxing's influence this time. Shuxing, why are you interested in my yin and yang dao? Don't say that you have no plans, so early even if my yin and yang Dao poses a threat to that person, although Jia is confident, he is not arrogant. At that time, we have not yet become famous. Sitting aside, Chu Xing, who was as steady as a mountain, lost 3 heads at this time, but his momentum was still overwhelming like a raging flame. He glanced sideways at Jia Yan and said with a stern look, "Jia Yan, you probably have offended too many people in Xingyu. I am just someone who tipped off the news." Jia Yan directly faced his eyes. The countless compound eyes of the giant mosquito made the opponent's hair stand on end, and he had the urge to stand up and fight. Having been beaten several times by Jia Yan and losing confidence, this strong man was not completely afraid of Jia Yan, but he had already buried a shadow in his heart. "Humph, since you and I want to make peace, so what if I inform you of this person's information? The other party is a strong female from the Cai clan. I won't say much else." Jia Yan nodded as expected. "I see, thank you Chuxing friend." He didn't need the other party to say anything more. It was enough to know that he was from the so-called Cai clan. Concubine Kun is causing trouble again. Moreover, the movement caused this time was even more powerful than the last time the White Dolphin was instigated to attack the Orion arm. There are only so many galaxy-level people, but now there is still a lower-level territory lord who has taken action himself, and another lower-level territory lord has been affected and is trying to do something to him. Next time, could it be a level above domain lord? How can it be? Concubine Kun herself is only at the galaxy level. Her family can have some relationship with a lower-level domain lord, but no matter how powerful the person is, they are no longer within the scope of her contact. I want to know why Lord Shuxing listened to the words of an outsider and carried out unethical actions against my yin and yang Dao. Don't tell me that you are preparing to conduct a friendly investigation of this force. Chu Xing snorted coldly and seemed unwilling to answer. This time he had a conflict with Jia Yan's yin and yang Dao. He thought that it would not be easy for the two kings to meet, but he didn't expect that Jia Yan followed the cards and came to the hinterland of the Chuxing forces in person, in the Longtan Tiger's Den. He was forcefully forced into not making peace. Although he swallowed this tone because the situation was stronger than others, he could never agree with it in his heart. At least he would not show any more weakness because of Jia Yan's threat. "Haha, Your Excellency Jia Yan, Brother Chuxing, listen to me. Beings like us have already transcended ordinary mortal lives. We should be open-minded about everything and don't have to argue to the point of getting into a fight. Wouldn't that mean we lose our status in the eyes of mortal beings?" The territory lord who was invited to serve as the middleman between the two parties reconciled the situation with a smile. This time he was invited by Chu Xing to attack Jia Yan together, but in fact he didn't use much force. After knowing that Jia Yan was a subspace talent, he had been working hard. Otherwise, Jia Yan would not have been so smooth sailing under the encirclement and suppression of the two lower-level domain lords. At least there would have been some crisis. Therefore, under the premise that there is no better choice, this person serves as the middleman, and both parties are satisfied. Seeing that the faces of both of them were extremely gloomy, but no one refuted his words, the lower level of the territory lord immediately understood that both parties were waiting for him to smooth things over. He said understandingly, "Let's see, Your Excellency Jia Yan, my Chuxing brother is indeed a bad-tempered man. If you force him to tell you the reason, I'm afraid it will be counterproductive. And I also understand that if he doesn't tell you anything, you won't." "I won't agree. How about this? I'll think of a way to get the best of both worlds. You wait for the two of you to tell each other what you want. Maybe you can both benefit without going through any battles. Isn't it a beautiful thing?" Jia Yan and Chu Xing looked at this person strangely. This guy seems to have a kind heart and is trying to make peace for both parties. In fact, as a witness, no matter what secrets the two parties have, he can be the unjust beneficiary because there is no way around him. There were all sophisticated people present. Well, Your Excellency Chu Xing, I have been roaming in your Chu Xing force for half a year, and I can probably guess what you want, Jia Yan suddenly said in silence. I do feel that here we are, there is something in your Chuxing force that can help me, but the relationship between you and me is not complementary. If one person is half the relationship, I think you and I will not agree. I wonder if you have any suggestions on this point? Jia Yan said, and the sinister bird of prey in Chu Xing's expression was quickly thrown out of the sky. He was afraid that Jia Yan would not want to communicate with him about that matter. As long as there is a chance and a step, he is still willing to negotiate peace with Jia Yan. In the eyes of such a strong man, a moment of humiliation and failure is just a short period of experience in life. Who has not experienced it, even a person like Jia Yan? A victorious general has countless experiences of escaping for his life and being embarrassed in the past. It's not like no one remembers them now, so this matter is out of the question. Isn't that thing of yours complementary to mine? Chuxing's eyes were fierce, not that he didn't believe Jia Yan's words, but that he couldn't believe even half a word. On the other hand, the eyes of the intermediary territory lord, who seemed to be unwavering, were filled with curiosity and surprise. He couldn't even understand it, so it was a bit difficult to get a share of it. It's just that for him and his long-lasting existence, this little time is nothing. As long as the two of them don't leave him alone, there will always be a chance to learn specific information. He is very patient and there is no problem in waiting slowly. The two of them then engaged in another round of verbal battles, and made various arguments and reasons. The lower level of the territory lord who listened to the conversation between the two parties gradually understood from the initial confusion. These doorways suddenly became clear, and his expression was uncertain, as if he was thinking about something. In the general power of the three kingdoms, he is a swinging middleman. Whichever side he leans to, the other side will instantly fall into a backward situation. Although he is a friend of Chuxing, in the face of huge interests, he is not unable to consider forming an alliance with Jia Yan. It's a pity that Jia Yan and Chu Xing don't know what this person is thinking. This loophole and threat was naturally blocked during their discussions. The strong man in the middle who wanted to use the power of brain waves to communicate with one of them had sharp eyes several times, but he was unable to say any conditions. In the end, he watched the two of them reach some kind of secret agreement. This conversation, the process comes to an end. Congratulations to both of you, Your Excellency Jia Yan, especially you. You were not well known in the past, but once you were revealed, you soared into the sky. From now on, you will surely be among the most powerful people in the galaxy Central Star region. I hope that if Your Excellency Jia Yan is free, you can take a rest at my residence, and I will definitely welcome you. Thank you very much. To be honest with you, I, Xianyun Yehi, often travel around. If I have the opportunity, I will definitely go there. The three of them were chatting happily on the surface. They smiled and removed the defensive measures in the place where they were talking, and revealed themselves in front of the public. You must know that this matter affects the safety of the entire Chuxing force. During today's meeting, countless eyes were focused here. The starry sky outside the negotiation venue was already overcrowded. Countless strong men and countless troops were filling the starry sky. As security guards, all outside observers, reporters, spies from outside forces, etc. were all driven tens of thousands of kilometers away to avoid affecting the three top powerhouses negotiating here. As soon as Pu appeared, the three huge figures were immediately surrounded by a bustle. The shooting equipment flickered with light from time to time, capturing the figures of the three powerful men. Jia Yan and Chu Xing were close to each other in a friendly manner, but they were still not close to within 500 kilometers. Otherwise, even Jia Yan and Chu Xing would have been hard-pressed to survive a close attack from the other side. A master's every move is fatal. Your Excellency Jia Yan, Thank you for cooperating with this force in our propaganda. If you had not done so, people within our force would have been in panic for some time. It's easy to say. As long as there is no more fighting between you and me in the future, it will be the happiest thing to be friends with Qin and Jin forever. That is, it is about the happiness of our descendants. It doesn't matter if you and I are tired. By the way, regarding your subordinate force, the Yin-Yang sect, I have issued an order, not only to divide the backward star field to you, but also to cut off the 15 lights. The areas within the scope of the year are all under the jurisdiction of your Yin and Yang Dao. I don't know this, are you satisfied? Jia Yan was extremely surprised this time. In the central star field of the Milky Way, every inch of land is valuable, let alone the command area of the 15 light-year land. Even if there are 1 or 2 living planets, there will be many territory lords fighting life and death for them, as well as the lower-level territory lords. How could a domain lord be so generous? But when I think about it, it suddenly dawns on me. The development of backward star regions is extremely difficult, and the value is also not high. As for the land adjacent to that area, it is Shangxia's territory. Shangxia has reached the senior domain lord level, and the land under his command has gradually become less reliable. Rather than keeping the area under the jurisdiction of the Chuxing forces, it would be better to hand it over to Yin-Yang Dao, since the losses would not be big anyway. Thank you very much. Jia Yan accepted it without hypocrisy, which was considered to be the end of the other party's love. The Chuxing force does not have much significance, but it is completely different for Yin and Yang Dao. It can be said to be extremely valuable. From any angle, the central star field of the Milky Way is a place where heroes and outstanding people gather. Yin and Yang Dao may not be involved in this yet, but eventually some or even all of their energy will gradually be concentrated in the central star field of the Milky Way. With such a place to stay, it will save us a huge problem in the future. But wouldn't the Chuxing forces not think of this and keep a powder keg around them that can explode anytime and anywhere? Or rather, there are other considerations. Jia Yan didn't care much about it. Let's talk about things when the time comes. At least the two sides have so far made peace with each other and become friends on the surface. These 6 months are enough for him and me to complete the matter, and then leave with Adisha. I vaguely feel that this trip is not only not the biggest gain for me, but also Adisha. It will be the biggest gain from this trip to the Chuxing forces. Jia Yan couldn't tell what kind of benefits Adisha would get, or in other words, what will be gained if she fully develops her formation talent combined with her own mental talent, but it is definitely something that makes Jia Yan proud, and it may also be beneficial to Jia Yan. In fact, as Adisha also knew, Jia Yan said that he has been pursuing the improvement of his family's talent, but since he researched the direction of the formation gene talent, he has not stopped borrowing the experience of others, and finally allowed himself to be under the condition of evolved beast body talent. Then add the layer of Bu of array gene talent. This is Jia Yan's ambition, his ambition. How strong he will be by then, and how terrifying his future potential will be, even Jia Yan himself shudders when he thinks about it. Of course, that is just an ambition that cannot see the possibility, and can only dare to think about it. After all, Jia Yan is too strong now, and his talent is too shocking. If he wants to add the array gene talent to him under such talent conditions, it may not be an easy thing to do, because these two superposition is by no means just the addition of 1 + 1 = 2. It is a variable that changes the world on another level. I am afraid that Jia Yan himself cannot predict what level he will reach by then.